Well, after the first, actual second round, so I did see, some people who actually probably did to say much more better than. So, okay, one thing got to remind you again, when we remember we talked about federal reference before, so when we try to have like the primary reference, we're better off to just put it in what? The finest line. Remember talk about that, Again, we talk about these things actually doesn't exist, right? They don't exist. This line basically just like imaginative because if we have a piece of paper, what are we gonna have? This is border, there's no line there, there's only border. So we try to mimic whatever those border supposed to apply here. So it gives you, it's a reference about how big the size of this and all. I mean, that's it. So, we shouldn't be just have a very thick line. We try to do is like as minimal as possible. So just say, keep it in, if you will do on your computer, what's the farthest point you can have? And what is the farthest size? 0.25, is that right? And then you just want to keep those lines 0.25. And also when you draw on the board, again, also try to do it as fine as possible, as thin as possible, because if you don't do that, again, we just repeat the same issue, those lines are not supposed to be there, seriously, if this is only for very reference only. So I guess that's the story. So next time when you kind of draw something, again, try to go to the finest line that you can have. To make sure those lines actually just telling people this is the parameter only, this is not say, the exact visual element. It's not part of any visual elements here. So that's the story. Okay, so this one, you see that it's nice that you have things put together on this way. I guess I told you about maybe say move the E up. There's no doubt on that because if you touch with the border, it probably will get a little bit better result. But then you just have that E type pretty much encapsulated by the black square here. The reason behind is like once you got the E here, you probably have more relationship related to outside instead of that inside the box here. So that is one of the things. But once you do that, I don't know whether that TH supposed to be moved along with the E to make it kind of line up better because what you see right now, even though it may not be that like easy to catch up, but somehow you can see, if you kind of look at starting from T and H, and all the way come here, the E looks like shift up a little bit, so it's a little bit odd on that one. So you try, make them perfectly like a line up, that probably be better. And those like text that we going to have here is actually, I guess, point is like we kind of mentioned about if you have more than 3 different typefaces together once you put in one piece of design, you really have to pay attention to that. I guess you probably have like, I don't know how many typefaces you get to that, it's so many. So what's going to happen? Because those type style, they basically are different, right? So when the difference, like they cause individual tensions, once they kind of carry similar weight, then this area tends to be a little bit too messy because there's too many things going on. So it's not a very good idea about hierarchical arrange here. So maybe one suggestion for that is like don't use so many different typefaces. Or the other way to do it is what? Try to maybe say put some text together closer and leave some just like farther from that particular group of text. If you do that, you try to make several different things become one bigger, group of elements. In this way, you probably can help a little bit for, solve the problem of like individual elements tend to be so heavy, by the moment you try to read that. So, you know, that will mess around with the hierarchy system. So if you kind of find a way to kind of minimize whatever those like, you know, effect on creating individual lists for everything, that tends to be much more heavier in some way than the other one. And if that's the case, maybe it's good to just find a way, maybe say merge some together and make it turns to be combined. And also if the whole combined thing will turn to be heavier than the other. So in this way, we create a better, like, you know, hierarchy, you know, in this way, you probably will do on that. Okay, so the other thing is like, we're so clear about, okay, the there is actually something we talk about is the primary thing, the primary element. But at the same time, let's work with, you know, image. Well, again, I talked about it a long time ago, saying if you have an image will typically call so much attention, even though you may have type, you know, alongside with it. The image is definitely, even though the image is more than whatever the main, whatever text you have, even that's the case, the image will also cause, you know, much more attention than the text. Now the case is like, you know, you have the image like this big, like this heavy, and then you have that text, you know, which is the primary information. We have this like heading here. It's just huge. You really look at the weight between this and this, what you're gonna see, pretty much so close, right? You may say, oh, the E is quite common right now because it's trying to be reversed, but somehow when we see that, what is gonna happen? This is heavy, but this is like also heavy. But which one is much more heavier? That's just another thing you probably have to think about. So they may have some kind of like connotation, they have some kind of conflict between which one is actually the primary information right now. Looks like they both are right now. So, well, put it in that way, it's like someone has to win. So you may want to do, let's say, make this less heavier, maybe let's make this a little bit lighter compared with that, or maybe make this like lighter compared with this. Either way will work. Right now, maybe they have a little bit conflict. So think about, you know, you may want to turn one to be more solid, the other one turns to be a little bit weak compared with that. If that's the case, you will have a better hierarchy between these two because they are the major thing. They are the major. So you got to really think about which one should take the lead, you know, things. So I guess if you try that, you probably see, you know, if you, let's say for instance, you reduce the size of this, you probably feel the whole combination probably turn to be better. And that's okay. Or maybe go the other way, you make these even much more bigger, whatever heavy, and you probably feel like, oh, make this a little bit smaller and make it better. And that also related to something that you also create side by side with. Let's say this text here, you know, we always talk about, hey, the relationship between something heavy, something like, you know, they better have the good proportion. Say this one is like very heavy, maybe you may want to even reduce the size of this, make it a little bit smaller. And this way, you probably see how the weight can turn things so interesting and also appealing because, you know, the relationship between the big and small kind up to some kind of proportion, then we probably feel this much more comfortable. And the same case for these. These is actually right on the, right on the right-hand corner, right, lower right-hand corner here. So this is actually quite strong and also heavy. Remember, I mentioned about when things put close to the border and also surrounded with just white space, that means like pretty much that element is by itself alone. That thing returns to be quite heavy. So if we just keep it on this side, compared with the rest of those, maybe it's a better idea that we kind, you know, a little bit smaller. Let's make it smaller, probably see, this still can carry this, you know, asymmetrical balance, but somehow won't be like, these tends to be a little bit too heavy than offset bounds, and then make the whole thing looks like it's a little bit rigid on that way. Because again, no, even though this is not that big, but somehow compared with the rest of those, if we can actually make it a little bit smaller, it probably feel, that the dynamic feelings about the relationship to come up because the gravity design, because the size between them, it's just basically it's like overlay everything, then we have a better relationship with anti-composition. So this one needs to be a little bit smaller, tends to be a little small. So we just, and also that is, what do you think about this? Yeah, they're not in the same way. But again, when we talk about the weight issue, we talk about, hey, maybe they shouldn't be even close. This should be like way different. Then we probably can see, because we talk about the proportion, 70%, versus 30%, those kind of relationship, we probably can show a little bit better balance, we call asymmetrical balance. But now, since this is like, in terms of the way, maybe this is a little bit like lighter than that, but somehow it's not that much lighter than this. So when you look at them, and also think about the size between them, look at how, say, the width here, the width here, the height here, the height here. They are pretty close. So if they can be a little bit different, for instance, if you don't have that many text lines here, maybe say, I just have one compared with this one, you probably do over the balance seems like better. Because I have to be more like asymmetrical balance instead of just balance. So that's just the case when we see something like this. So, but in general, this is pretty cool. The image, what do you think about the image?
The image is an album cover from the back.
But is that the image turns out to be a little bit too much, too busy when you look at the image now?
The image it's another, maybe change the black square into another.
Well, you want to talk about the square here?
Yes.
It does help. This one is a good one actually, because the thing about if you get rid of this black square here, this turns out to be even much more busy.
Oh.
This is a lot that goes on for this image, black and white coming in and out. Again, we talk about when we see, say, a pattern, when we talk about pattern, if we just have the black and white pattern, so we typically see pattern like black, white, black, white, black, white, keep repeating. So it turns out to be so busy, and it calls so much attention. But we don't feel it's comfortable when you see something keep coming out, whatever, So those will just turn out similar to whatever the image you have. So if you can find image is like, less this kind like black and white kind keep repeating kind effect on here, you probably see it better. So I just feel the image itself got this little problem that way. So you still have an image, it's quite sharp when you look at the image itself. It is like, it's nice image, but somehow just say, I guess this like repetition of black and white comes just too much right now. So it's just also too rapid. So it looks like so busy, and then it will cause your attention, but you probably don't feel it's that kind of comfortable when we look at image like that. If we can be able to find image kind tone down with this repetition of black and white, it helps. Because the sequence for like, repeating that black and white and like we say light and shadow, just so rapidly, and then you just feel this, it turns out to be so busy. If we'll be able to just cut down this, repeating black and white, then it probably helps. It isn't easy to find image that, especially when you already have everything set down, and then you say, I suddenly have to change in that way. It's really hard, I know. So what we could do is like maybe do some Photoshop touchings on those images, and I make that, maybe say I just select the whole thing, turn it to be I say a block of like black only, and then don't have any like white at all. If you do that, or maybe say I select this not saying you fill any color yet, just say maybe let's just select this area, but somehow change the lightness to something much more darker. If you do that, then we probably will see this area tends to be like less white, like fading on here, so maybe that can contribute to more like, I mean, less like that black and white repeating effect on here. So in that way, something looks a bit more sharp, that helps. And the other thing is hard also because the cigarette package. The cigarette package here is just another thing because this is quite when you look at that, it's just quite like right in here, and also you see those graphics and area, whatever. This is also got this is like very dazzling effect when we see that. So this is also repeating is kind of similar, like what you have the hands here, what? Now the black and white kind also repeat so rapidly. So in this way, it also gives you so much like tensions to kind of force to look at this black and white effect you saw here. So that's also causing you so much tension. So this is, I mean, talk about the entire image is just super heavy actually. So if it's super heavy, and also when we talk about, remember that, when we, even though if we have just like one image here and one text here, if we really compare with that, no matter what, even though maybe say the text is a little bit heavier than the image, but we will pay attention to the image first. So unless you actually make this so light, which is maybe say by reducing its size, or maybe say make it not that intensify at all, maybe say just say cut down those like repetition of the black and white. Maybe you do that, but still it will cause so much tension because of the image. So I can say you can, and you have no way to do it, but somehow maybe that's the better way, which is what? You still make this is like, heavy, but make, say, something kind of less heavier than that. I mean, probably say way less heavier than this one. But if that's the case, you will get something, better, but still you have to fix whatever this image. Unless you find something really is twins. Something just look like this, but somehow which allowed you to come up with something with this like less like repetition on the black and white. So if that's the case, probably it's better on that way. So besides that, I think everything looks good, gives me very kind of strong feelings about it. But somehow again, if this secret can be even a little bit more clear to look at also, because I think the text you have quite big, so it hides a lot of details of this image here, so you won't be able to see clearly. So if you show a little more, it's probably better. So and also maybe someone may have this kind of special to say, oh, you got a cigarette actually stick it out from the background all the way penetrate whatever this work here and come out here and see part of this like cigarette actually like penetrate out from the edge maybe. So in this way, you probably can see, oh yeah, this is a little bit better when we see this thing. So a little bit like Photoshop, works on it. May probably have to put this entire thing with whatever the image in Photoshop and do this like special effect. Okay, we see the lovely toy.
That's true.
Well, I guess this is the light. Well, the light show up on the screen here actually through the projector looks like much more thicker than whatever it's supposed to be. I don't know why. When you see the screen here, it's pretty much okay, I guess. Yeah, how thick for the lines you have? Like 0.5? Don't you know about it? No, 0.1, I don't know. Probably 1 point, I don't know. Probably less than 1 point, probably 1 point, 0.5, I guess. You don't know. Okay. Again, if you'll be able to do it, try to find the farthest one, try to find this as thin as possible one. If that's the case, probably. And again, things show up on the screen probably better on on a computer screen than this projecting screen here. But still, I guess it's like last time we talked about this, what? Uh, you know, we always say if we have something considered like lighter, right down on the board, it's better than you have something so heavy on the board, because in this way, we see this like dynamic thing comes along. And if we have something so heavy on the board, it just like make the whole thing so stable and stand still, maybe. So that's the thing. And also, if you have two kind of like that, what's going to happen? You know, if the upper one and the upper, say, columns here is heavier and the lower columns here is lighter, well, which is good actually. This is lighter, that's okay. But somehow, since they still quite close, think about the size of it. And also, you know, think about the weight of them. You know, even though when we have that skyline, you know, as a twin, one same as the other one put on both sides, even they look alike or look the same, you would always think the bottom one turns to be a little bit heavier because it's on the bottom. So if we keep that in our minds, like if we want to create something considered a little bit more dynamic, maybe it's a better idea that we can actually change the size, whatever we got for the lower one. Just like reduce the width of it to something kind of like obviously, you know, smaller than the other one. So in this case, you probably see that's more dynamic looking. And because the gravity effects, you know, just like when we talking about, you know, people want to make sure things gonna move. We make sure they have a very solid, heavy base to kind of hold everything in place. So in that way, we probably see, hey, this is like very stable, very safe, whatever, you know, we probably do on that. But you know, those stable and safe kind of like concept onto anything related to this visual arrangement, we probably don't feel so delightful with it because it's lack of dynamic, lack of movement. So if we have something considered smaller, like less, like you know, less here, more here, maybe heavier here, lighter here, you probably see that dynamic would come up. So that's the reason why last time I told you about, hey, maybe we've got to reduce the size of this texting, or maybe say reduce the column width, you know, reduce whatever, you know, the lightness of whatever. So we can actually make this part turn to be much more lighter than whatever the upper part. So it will create some kind of dynamic. I think that's the major thing we have. For this, did you try other like typeface? This typeface, I guess it's not only little bit like illogical, but also I think it turns out to be a little bit like unclear when we see because it's like those like text tends to be so thick, you know, once you have this in bold. So I guess it's a little bit hard to read it, even when it's so easy to know spot those problems. Say you look at the E here is completely, I can't say it because of the projector, but even you kind of read it on the screen, it's a little bit like unclear because it looks like a little bit muddy. And then when you look at this, it's like really hard to read. That's just a thing. Okay, what typeface do you have for this one?
Right.
Frankly,
Yes.
okay, so this special type of phones. Well, again, you know, if we were using some taxes, which I mean, sometimes it's not common. So maybe I don't know. The point is like the things that we learn about before. Say, remember those like terms like, say heretical, say Garamond, you know, say Baskerville, you know, those types we use all the time because they are have a long history and also it has proved that they are so uh, well usable because, those texts been developed for a long time. And also give you something that is kind always like a good performance based on based on whatever the way how it's shown. So, sometimes when we deal with some kind of special, which is actually not that common font that we may have to think about whether they are good enough or not. No, I guess your eyes will probably tell you the difference. So it's good to have, let's say if you have other typefaces which is being replaced with this, maybe is I guess it's a little bit better, but somehow I think it's worth to have a try to see, what other font may work here. So that's one of the things. What do you think about those like circles you have for the background? Again, we talk about asymmetrical balance. We talk about something uneven. So, if you try it, when you see something, basically side by side put together, we always have this issue. Say, I have two boxes put together. The typically will look like what? Basically, what? So even, maybe say, or maybe so symmetrical. So if we try to use this size of this, like, let's say for the case here is like you have two circles here. Okay, if you have this size of the circle, that may look a little bit better because this is uneven. It turns out to be a little bit uneven, even though we deal with this kind of things. So maybe you make this smaller, or maybe you just keep it like this, or maybe you make this smaller. So in this case, probably feel maybe it's a bit, probably feel a little bit better because it turns out to be more uneven. Compare that and that. So that is something maybe worth a try. When you have too much gray on this piece, things turns out, in general, for the whole thing, things turns out to be, say, a little bit what? Less contrast in terms of the whole thing. Because, the gray itself can actually make things kind of turn to be much more gentle. Once you see this is like a spectrum of a color of the value, that when we read that, these can contribute something as the middle one. And then from white to black, once you have the gray, too much gray, then we have a tendency to see the whole general contrast with the whole thing turns to be a little bit even, a little bit to be so close. So if things come with a little bit like clear in terms of those contrast, it will be more delightful actually. When we see something it turns out to be a little bit like I can't say it's muddy, but somehow it turns out to be so less in terms of those like contrast. If things will not be that like excited, just like we look at the whatever the gloomy skies, when you see haze and mist and fog, all over the place, things turn out to be just so gray and everything's gray. Then you feel, what do you feel about it? I can't say you definitely feel miserable, but somehow we don't feel that excited because it's like we don't see sunshine, we don't see, enough contrast, we probably feel on that way. So it may have a little bit side effect like that, similar to when you put too much gray on your piece, it may turn to be something like that. So try that if you don't have too much gray. So that's the reason why at the beginning of the project, I keep saying, hey, maybe you're just not going to apply too much gray on it. When you apply so much gray, things turn out to be what? Less contrast and it's just like a little bit miserable. So it's just like what we say. The other thing is the image wherever is. Once you probably can see a little bit clear on your screen, on your computer screen, but it may not be that up to whatever that acceptable level. The reason why, because when we see all this like tone very they tend to be so dark actually. So I know, yeah, you may say that fit with the scene or the mood you create here, but still the image itself is a little bit unclear because I guess that the overall contrast you have with the whole thing, it tends to be much more like toward like this like dark way to look at it. So everything like dark tone to the dark tone more than whatever the light tone, and also maybe say the color you can live it high, what muddy when you see that, and then you don't see so clear with the image, if you can have a little more white on whatever, say on the neck of this turtle, maybe it helps a little bit to kind of clean up whatever the image itself and make us see easier to read it, and easier to watch it. So that's the one thing. So, compare with his like cigarette Henry's one. His one is like, so much like black and white, keep repeating. And yours is like pretty much everywhere, it's just like in kind. I can't say it's black, but somehow close to black, but somehow so dark, everywhere so dark. So you probably see, hey, we do see white here, but somehow looks like it comes with too high contrast all the time. Then also, it's not only that, and the whole thing in general is just like linked to more like dark instead of white. So to talk about the black and white balance looks like not really clear on this way, not really good on that. So maybe that's the problem with the image. So the image needs to be maybe say in like if you can have some midtones actually kind of showing up here, it helps to make that image better. So this is only, I think this is the problem for this image. Again, if you already have everything set here, it's a little hard to find a new image to replace it. But if we have this like a chain of this image is will be delightful if that's the case, just like something comes with a little bit like, better kind on those like value and tone, for that. So now just somehow there's too much contrast based on whatever the dark, and also, the overall tone could be just like linked to whatever the dark. So make the whole thing turns out to be just so dark actually. So maybe, if we open up with some kind of area that tends to be a little bit brighter instead of so dark, then it may help. Just about the contrast. Slapping turtle with that, but in general, it's just interesting. It's nice looking. Okay, so any questions for this?
Or I need to change the image background.
I think it's not about the background, about the turtle. Yeah. The turtle tends to be just so dark. And also, when you see the image here, you see this is like dark skin, of course. It looks like only black, right? But it does have some white, but it's though they are kind in the extreme kind of relationship. You only see the black and white. But she much more black, but just a little bit white there. But somehow you probably don't see some kind of like mid-tone, which is gray. So we see like black and white, but also, things should be like in a better like fashion, which is actually like black, gray, and white. So we see that it's more like, more like natural look. But if we have something that's come with that black and white only, we call it high contrast. But it is not actually high contrast. It's just like somehow it makes you feel it's high contrast, but somehow the high contrast actually not helping here. The reason why, because like most of the area is actually in black. So, see everything is also in dark. How do we see the details of this image? So things come down without enough details, and that's the reason why the image is not that good. If we have something kind clean up some black or dark area, tends to be a little lighter, the whole thing will be much more better. So that's the reason I just say, the picture itself. I guess if you take a picture like this, unless you're going to find something just like this one shooting the same spot with same turtle, you're probably able to see the difference. And if you use that one to replace it in this one, it will be better. But that picture doesn't exist, so that's a little hard, unless you change with something else. But you already have everything set. Let's say you have the topic's name, we have something that also related to that, turtle, of course, it's hard to find something to replace it with. But maybe that could be possible that you can actually again go to Photoshop to light up some area here. To make it more like acceptable, when we see that tones turns out to be more like say better in terms of those proportions between black and white. So it may be better. We just say if we were able to find a picture, or maybe just do something in Photoshop. Did you make the background, or you just have the background with the circle, right? So they come together.
Yes.
Okay, so the background probably is okay. Maybe you want to light up background a little bit. In Photoshop, there's a tool called Dodge. You can use a Dodge to, light up some area. A Dodge is a tool in Photoshop. So you can use a Dodge to cover, it's a round one, you put on top here, you click. Then the tone will turn a little bit lighter at a time. Then you want to have a much more lighter, you click it a couple of times. So in this way, then you can line up. Same thing can do it on here. But when you do that, the contrast would turn so low. So that's an offset for the whole thing. So you may have to really think about what you're going to do. But of course, you can use another way to make it like, work. And then I would say once I finish with that dot, I also do another thing in that level of the tone, and then I can change, to a better relationship in terms of the contrast. So you can always find, a range of things to do things in Photoshop. So let's say, when you see pictures like that, especially when we can find a picture to substitute this one, we may want to work some extra work on those like image here. So this is one thing. Okay. So that's one thing. All right. So anything else? Okay. Oh, a cigarette man again. Did you spend too long to get this curve done last night?
That's difficult.
This.
So I choose a more easy route.
What is the easy way? Oh yeah, there's a tool that can actually drag it out. So yeah, you can do it. So drag out whatever that and illustrate that. Yes, you can do that. But what you think about is circle, not really circle, the curve. Talk about the arc. What do you think about those two arcs? Are they too close? They're in the size. So again, we talk about this all the time. So when you see things even, we know about, hey, turn it to uneven. It's always good, you always get something kind of interesting if you do that. So let's say this, you just want to keep this arc like this big, and this one is small. Just shrunk it down a little bit, and then so this is my big one turns to be small one. So it may have a bit of like I guess that's better, but somehow probably and somehow we've got more chances we see something look better when you have this again uneven arrangement. Okay. We see it's never happened. It's like it doesn't look like him. Okay. Okay, the other thing, what kind of thing you see here? The hierarchy is so clear. But there's one thing that you see is when we always say things like even, uneven, those kind of things, symmetrical values, asymmetrical values, those kind of things. So what kind of thing you see here actually relate to that? Maybe related to that. Let's say, say this so-called like text slide, maybe say the length of it, the length of here, okay, and the length here, And even sometimes we see, oh, this is longer, so this better, but individual works length. Why is it individual? So that can be considered individual because it is in another typeface. So the length of it, length of it, what do you think? And the other thing also, the picture, you know, the text box. Okay, so those are in similar length, right? Imagine if we somehow we can try to see if you say change, you know, the length of these, make it shorter, whatever, compared with like a longer length of the image. What will it be? Would that be that? I don't know. I think it's worth to give it a try. Let's say you may probably say, hey, I only have this much of text, or maybe I have this much text, I have to put it here. If that's the case, how about if we're not going to change the, you know, overall length of this column here, maybe say you make this column into two columns. So one column here, another column here. So if you have one column here, one column here, it turns to be actually two columns. And the individual column width will be much more shorter than whatever it used to be. Then when we look at individual column compared with the, you know, the length of this picture here, or sorry, the width of this picture here, what do you say? We see they are different. So in this way, will it contribute with more better contrast relationship? And that is the thing we may want to think about. It may be quite interesting that if you do that, you make sure they are not even. And how about all these text here? Text here, text here. What do I say? Again, you know, if one is short and one is longer, so we probably see, well, they probably have a better relationship. So if this one is in one line, so you know that means I'm going to give it one line here, or maybe I keep the whole, say, whole line in the same typeface. But somehow I just change one individual letter to another typeface. Then you still can keep this is probably in a longer text-like format compared with something shorter. So in this way, that's what I'm saying, you know, uneven arrangement. It probably gives you something, right? Yeah, it gives you more contrast. We always talk about contrast, harmony, relationship, work together. We do want to have contrast and harmony, or you know, work together. Not saying just like just contrast only, not like that. If you have a contrast only, what I'm going to say. It's just chaotic because you know they just not working with the other one because they're just different, right? But we can't even have like either way. I mean, it's like we don't even. I mean, we also don't want to have like things come with harmony only. If that's the case, things tend to be just boring because everything looks like the same. So, you know, just like what we have, you know, for everyday life, if we have everyday, I mean, every day it's got a similar life, just like that, you probably feel it's boring. So again, you know, try to work around with this contrast and harmony and make things like, you know, not just to one side and just to, you know, contrast to one side to this harmony only. So they probably carry that contrast harmony together. This is depends, you know, how much contrast and how much harmony kind of relationship, you know. They show some kind of proportion, but somehow, again, you know, we know about, hey, this is going to this direction, this is going to this direction, but somehow they have something similar as well. Basically, following the flowing and the edges of these pictures. So in this way, you know, the positioning, the direction, they have the similarity, which is harmony. Right, but somehow other like length they also have harmony. Maybe say, well, they're not exactly the same length, but somehow if something kind of similar, we talked about proximity before, something may be close, then we also feel they look alike. Then we also consider that as too much harmony, maybe. So it's always things when we deal with, we also put a factor with a proportion on it. Proportion means something they should come with certain proportion, then we kind of feel they don't look like each other or they look like each other. So with the proportion, we can see that. So again, keep that in mind, it's like, make sure I can see it definitely not the same. So well, definitely longer, definitely shorter, whatever. Then in this case, we kind of feel more comfortable because, you know, we maximize the usage for this conscious harmony theory into it. If that's the case. So again, I can see this maybe say, if you kind of play around with it and probably say, oh, maybe I keep this like, you know, shorter. I don't want warm. I just want to put Kawaii there only, you know. So without that, maybe, oh, I should have Hong Kong HK in somewhere in this like, you know, elite so only and make it so sharp and almost like horn elements. Then we see this line and a shorter line and also a point element. You see the contrast, but they are following what? The same direction. So the direction in harmony contrast the length of it. So you see contrast harmony work together, it makes things more interesting. So that's the part we talk about. So when you see something is similar, length, size, weight, we always have to be careful about that because we just don't want everything to look the same. Or maybe it's too similar, you know, just below whatever the proportion that we talk about, you know. We always talk about 70%, 30%, those kind of proportions. I guess, you know, sometimes we even feel more delightful when we see something in like 80%, you know, versus like 20%. You know, extremely, we call it extreme big, extreme small, whatever, extreme heavy, extreme light, whatever. So it always gives you something that for your eye, we will probably feel it's more easy to see the difference. We can feel that the contrast like so obvious, and then in this way, you probably see this that. We talk about graphic tensions all the time. Okay, so what else? So the circle and the image. If you be able to have a picture plane, you know, it's not a bad idea that you actually make the circle even much more bigger than whatever. Because it may come with better relationship with the image. Again, proportion. So this is like another result if you try to change those contrasts for the size and the length of these elements here, you probably can clean up the whole thing a little bit. Now, since you have something quite similar, you can say the length and the weight, or maybe the size, then everything has to be a little bit what? Busy. Because they pretty much use similar weight. Then when we try to look at them, it's like, oh, when I look at this one, something else call me to look at it again. Right? So maybe I finish this, but when I look at this one, then you call me to look at it again. Because it's heavy enough to let you feel, well, I want to pay attention to that. But you have something similar like that over it. So that's the reason why we feel this thing is busy. So if we be able to cut down, say, oh, some maybe make sure it's long enough, when it's short enough, or some is big enough and small enough, that we know about, like we know that, say, when we look at something like a little heavy, then we know we won't pay that much attention to something considerably like or maybe way smaller than that. So in this way, you actually have to solve this like too busy problem. So this is other things you may want to. So again, think about the uneven arrangement is always help to make things work. So you know, think about when we try start with something, if we have something heavy, okay, something heavy, then we make sure we have something light next of it. So of course you can adjust it later on, but not saying you will tend to put something similar to that. So oh, this is heavy. I have to make sure something light related to it, or maybe next of it. So maybe I just draw something considered a line only. Then you think about, well, a line may be too thin, maybe too light. Well, you can start with something maybe heavier than that. but you're probably not gonna make something, put something like that, even though, I mean, yours pretty okay, but somehow like, the third one, the first one, you know, with the cigarette, like what we said, you know, if we have the pictures like this, huge, you know, already like causing attention. Then you have the heading, it's also so heavy. So then we have a little problem. So if we started with something we know about uneven arrangement, that means what? Well, that's something already heavy. Next of it must be light enough to show the heaviness of the other one. So we know about this is like, oh, probably a method to kind of starting with, maybe say later on we're going to kind of course, you do adjustment with those elements. But at that moment of time, at least we know about that, should be heavy, that should be light, you know, in this kind of principle, we come up with something easy to arrange later on, easy to adjust later on. If we don't do that, like, you know, his case is like, oh yeah, the image is like that big and the text also like that. Later on, you may have a problem that, you know, once you have to figure out which one actually needs to be emphasized or which one needs to be lead the whole, you know, composition. So in that case, maybe this is a problem. So that uneven arrangement concept maybe is always one. At least it helps you to get started. Okay, so that's what I'm saying. The smaller, or bigger, smaller, whatever, even though maybe that comes to, I don't know, maybe that may be a little too busy. In general, it's an interesting one. And that is one thing, maybe I can say only one thing, but somehow a little bit odd here, actually, you see this like a very special small circle, like, you know, the negative small circle here. I don't know whether you see that. You see that? So it's like you cut this circle with that small circle, right? So that's like, I think the question related to this is like, why there is a special treatment like that here? That even though it's light, but somehow it also cause attention. That kind of cause attention as well.
Because I want to express the character's heart is broken.
Oh, heart broken,
Yeah.
but it looks like a cracker. It's a heart. Looks like something like, you know, a special symbol. You know, maybe people do this like circle, and then within that circle, it turns to be, oh, maybe the major one, which is what the famous one is called, I say, a moon shape, like when we just like, you know, not in circle in the round, not in the round one, just like this, like say, you know, halfway, or maybe say it has one part tie, like, you know, being tie, like let's say a ellipse that you gotta cut it on this way, so it turns to something very famous, but somehow it means something else. But again, you know, that also relates to more than other looks like. But you know, if you say this is a heart, it's a little bit hard to say. But why don't you just put a heart there?
Oh.
Yeah, man, no, you can actually put the heart shape there. No one ever said you have to put a geometric form. I know geometric form probably gives you much more lighter, not heavy, because again, no one the background. It's just a background, you know, we don't want to like, you know, take over whatever the foreground. But somehow, if it turns out to be so obvious, so heavy, then we will feel it's more look like a foreground than a background. I mean, I understand that. But somehow, but you can still do like, you know, in any kind of shape, even though you do this is like organic shape, it's not a problem at all. You can do that, so it maybe can give you a little more feeling about that like whole scene or whole product you have, because I mean, it's about something sentimental, I guess. So if you got a heart shape, it's definitely better than a circle. Or maybe you're not going to put the entire heart there, like what you got for a circle. The circle is pretty much, I can't say it's entire circle, but somehow it just like pretty much 95% of a circle is already shown here. But when you replace with a heart, you can show, say, maybe 60% of the heart, at least you show one side of the heart, you can tell there's a heart. You don't need to show the whole heart shape here. Maybe you start from here, then you can have the heart there. Or maybe even more being cut off, but people can still catch that's the heart. So if that's the case, may work better than what you got right now. Or maybe using something even more like, guys have this like functionality like a heart or maybe something else. Maybe because it's sentimental again, falling angels, like, people feel so miserable by that moment, or just so blue at that moment, I don't know. But it's you may have something that can actually replicate whatever that feeling that scenes looks like. That could be a very powerful tool to show the entire, feeling about that, the post image. Maybe that's the way. Think about that. Some little things like this, it's okay, you go with it. But again, keep it in as little as possible if you can, maybe a little bit too much here. And also, I think the biggest problem is not saying you've got too many members of those. Just say the size of them.
Yeah.
The size of them is just way too similar. So, and then they being tack on just the corners of that, pictures. You haven't, then you have this like on here, except here. But see, this is like also a little bit too symmetrical, right? Because the ranges on those pretty much all corners except this one. So that's the case. Okay, so that is this is pretty much what's up. Any questions?
Maybe no. The main expression is the circle line, the heart draw.
This line is hard to draw, but I thought you found it too.
Yeah, but I only use two.
So if we are two to draw it, did you try using the circles to just circles, tools, pathfinder, and then once you cut everything and then somehow join them to find those curves you need, and then to join them together and form a longer one?
Yeah.
Did you try it?
I will try.
You didn't try.
I just cut two circles.
Well, even you don't join them together, as long as by its look, you can tell it's a line. That's okay. You don't have to join it. But somehow, we always do this, like when we see something, we want to make it not saying perfect, but somehow if we really want that's a line, in case sometimes we may just grab a part of it, try to move it somewhere because they are not joined together, then there may be a little problem. But if you're not going to move them, it doesn't matter. Or maybe you say, I just group them together. You don't have to join them if you don't want to. It's still okay because, as long as you can move the whole thing in one line, that's fine. You don't have to just make sure it's joined. No, I just say, I don't know why, because I guess the point is when you work, and then you probably know about, hey, I don't want to make any, not saying mistake, but somehow you don't want to leave any bug later on. Maybe say, once you work it out, I make sure it's I can't say perfect, but somehow, as much as I can to make sure there's no any hiccup at the end. And then, who knows, sometimes we don't know, people may make mistake, whatever, they don't know about that just in one line, then they just grab it and put it somewhere. Sometimes when you work, you not only work with yourself, also work with maybe your team members somehow. So you just play safe for everything. If you can do it this way, it's one line. It's just like that. If you think it's like needs to be in the one entire whatever shape, or make sure it's not partial shape put together. I make sure they join together, or be perfectly grouped together. I make sure that thing happens. Just say, this is like, I guess this is like, when you work, you probably want to do the best like that, make sure later on this, like, no problem, just like that. So, but if you don't want, it's fine. You just keep those shapes only, and by grouping them together, then it's the work if you want to do that. But Hong Kong is supposed to be separate, space, extra space right between two works. Home, and then after the letter G, you hit space bar, and then you have call, right? We know about this kind of thing. Unless you have like, and I guess, I don't know, that's probably the way. Or unless you have the initial HK. There's a name, yes. This is a little bit off. Karen Mall. Did she play? Did she play this one? Karen Mall, did she play this movie?
Yeah. Yes,
Is that her?
yeah.
You can.
Huh?
You said this, the image, this is.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, but wait.
Oh, that's not her.
That's not her.
But she's actually the main character.
Really? I didn't see the movie, sorry. I haven't seen her for a long while. At least like 10, how many years? 13, 14 years? I haven't seen her for a long while. Anyway. Okay, so no question? Okay, next one. Uh-oh, where is another line? Where's another frame? Huh? Oh, why? You just don't like it, right? You just don't like it. Okay, so the line is supposed to be here, right? All right. Okay. One of the things in general is interesting also. It's nice. I think one thing maybe you can or maybe you already overlook is what? Look at the weight of those like text there. Let's say everything you have here, they are also in bold style. Is that right? So if you have everything in bold, would there be too much similarity on this way? Or maybe would that be too much harmony on that way? So when you see things, everything is like this, like thick, because of the fold. If we really put this in some kind of like three-dimensional idea, like the environment that you see. So what would that be? Oh, maybe it's like every tree we see, they just so close to you. So they're pretty much on the same close area. I mean, close like same distance than you. So in this way, we have something missing, which is the depth we have. The depth we have actually missing because everything is here. If I'm standing here, everything in front of me is here, and then what's next of it? No, we don't see it because they all fall, because they all pretty much like that in this particular like area or the distance than me. So I guess, if you want to show the depth we have, maybe think about, well, that could be both, but that could be light. So if you have something in this light side, what are you gonna have to put? Well, you probably see, it's starting to see the depth actually come up much more better because we can tell the depth actually there. So that's what we're talking about. So even though use that concept to think about these, you may want to give people a sense, say, hey, this is more like a fan in front of whatever the girl, or maybe a gauge or maybe a gateway in front of her, maybe something just flow in front of her in pretty much similar position or similar level of depth, maybe we can say that. But think about if you can say change the size of some, or maybe change the weight of some. Let's say I use this boat, no problem, but I use this is like regular, or maybe I use this as thin, very thin, that even thinner than whatever the light typeface. That's thing about if you do that, or maybe say I keep those the same, but somehow I have another one is obviously much more bigger in terms of size. The moment you see, oh, you start to see something like, yes, they are in front of this girl, but they are in different levels of closeness in front of this girl. So in this way, probably, well, this is much more like, dimensional, much more dimensional. You can see the depth actually come up from this. Then things are no longer too flat. But don't get me wrong, I'm not saying this is too flat, but somehow it's a little bit flat, in terms of this, like, dimension idea. So it's just like maybe could be a good idea that you can actually play around to see, more differences on those like elements you have. So that may be good. So I think for this case, like now it's just got too much harmony on this similarity, which is actually contributed by what? The bonus you have. Those like bold typeface, one type of bold typeface you have. So that is, I guess, that's the problem. Yeah. Okay. When we have this image, I don't know, people always say, hey, I is a really good tool. Because, when you look at somebody, say, when people look at you, and then you somehow look at somebody, and what will I do? I will look at whom you're actually looking at, right? So this is how design can actually play so much like, with the ideas about, making things so interesting. So maybe there was some kind visual element you actually put here, and actually echo whatever is her eyesight to see. That will make the whole thing even more interesting. When we look at her, we typically will follow, hey, because her eye is actually looking this way, but somehow she was looking at emptiness. So would that be better say you actually have something else here? Like that, if someone here, and then can not saying, she definitely look that one will be artificial, whatever. So it will make the whole thing interesting. So when we see this kind of picture, we always will place this picture not in the middle, somehow probably here. The reason why you leave more space on right middle toward maybe the other end. The other end, you probably place something else you want people to see, because we use her eyesight to lead people to look at that thing. So it's so powerful. So if you leave it some like distance between that, and people can actually, when they read on your piece, can travel all around to all the space you have to look at this time. So that will be a powerful tool that you can do. Since I see your pictures here, looks like I feel it's a little bit not really disappointed, somehow a little bit like not quite sure that maybe that should be something there. We always have this question. But somehow, since that's this like nothing there, then just do a little bit waste of the image. I can't feel that. Okay. Okay, what do you think about using caps only? Because when I see you always just using caps only, not saying you are not allowed to do it, but somehow if you have only caps only, something considered light turns out to be heavy. Because all caps, what is the all cap? It looks like some kind of pattern format. because it doesn't have this like ascender, descender, it don't have this like, they don't have this like up and down. They're just, constantly within, say, a track, constantly with one line, something like that. Because they just maintain through, this is like cap height only. So that's just a thing. If you try the lowercase, then you probably see this could be lighter than you have this. But depends what you want. People may say, I want to emphasize on this. But for heading, fine, emphasize on it because heading. But this is considered body copy. So body copy somehow is like, it give you something of the light. And also with the lightness we can actually contribute to more like, dimensional look for the whole thing. Instead of just something considered flat. So it has a multi functionality, for something that using not caps only for the body copy. So this is one of the reasons why. So think about it. I just feel it's like maybe again too much similarity, too much repeat for all these elements similar in similar ways. So that may be a little problem for that. Okay, any questions about? But that the border seems so little. I mean, the bottom was supposed to be thicker than that. I guess I don't know how we're going to draw that another line back down here. Okay, okay. So you may have to fix that again. We have the size requirements, right? Okay. Another lady. She's not here. You? Oh, okay. She just went out. Okay. Huh? Okay. So we go next one. Not this one, right? Okay, maybe this one. So this one is okay. This one is yours. Oh, okay. And then we'll try next one. Okay, there your. Compare with before is better. But one thing is so interesting that we see, okay, when we see this, if we reduce it by, say, how many percent? 50%? Let's say 50% of the image, okay? Once you reduce this to 50%, it looks like the size of this. Even the length of it. Or maybe let's say the height of it. So a downsize it to 50% is similar to that. Even the proportion, even the height, even the length, looks like the kind is similar. So the one of the things is like, yeah, would that be like, yeah, again, the same thing, too much similarity on that, right? I don't know. Would we even change whatever the, say, the proportion of it? I don't know. Again, I know right now when we talk about the number scale, but would that the similarity related to the percentage or related to the proportion we talked about before? So would it be just proportionalized that maybe a little bit too close, too similar? Even the size of difference. So I just wonder whether we see this, like the first impression I have when I see that it looks like This is the father, this is the son. The son is actually, quite look like father, but the son, turns out to be much more bigger. And then it just look as like it's the father. So in that kind of similarity, there's one topic. Again, we talk about uneven kind of arrangement. The other thing. Okay, so this is one thing. For the image itself, like it's good that you have this like ladder come into, and then it helps to kind of transcend the space, like relationships, like the space can actually from out space, in space, they kind of start to relate to each other more with this help. I guess it's one of the things. Maybe the other thing is like this kind of arrangement could be a little bit more if it's the case. Let's say I have one big whatever symbol somewhere in this like halfway say translucent or halfway transparent on here to so even have a little more depth here. So let's say I put a big, let's say number 2, okay, two big tube here, and make it to be like semi-transparent. Then in this way, you see that it's like space even better because like again, maybe give you more depth and also give you a more relationship with the inter and outer space relationship. Because this, like, I guess maybe this picture seems to be a little bit too long, but it's not long enough, like, put another background with it's a little too long. Then there's a lot of things considered in the same kind, say, level space, something like that. If you really think about you standing here, something close to here, you probably feel it's not like that. Is that this one is already there? No. I mean, for that semi-transparent? Yeah. So you did put a symbol here, right? Yeah. Oh, maybe you need a little bit more to kind of pull out. To pull up more. If you pull up more, it may have like, some kind of like, let's say, for instance, if this can be pulled up a little bit and put it here and use this edge to line with the starting of this column, the starting of more relationship. So again, we talk about this relationship and also we talk about if you have that, it turns out to be give you more like depth for the whole thing, more dimensional relationship. And also that relate to inter and outer kind of relationships. So outer of this, inter of this, talk about the space relationship. Okay, the other thing could be similar to when we talk about herpes. Looks like everything is also in bold. Is that right? Bold, like bold, B-O-L-D, bold. So it's like everything's so dark, so heavy, so thick, So even though the body text you have is also in that, is that right? Oh, it's regular, I guess. But maybe the projection make it so bold, like make it so dark, maybe. It turns out to be those strokes are to be a little bit too thick, I guess. I have this feeling that when I see it, because this is quite dark, so I kind of feel it's like wasn't bold. I know it's not bold, but somehow if it's only irregular, compared with you have the major all these things, pretty much they also in bold. So we may have this illusion say you also see this in bold. But even though it's not in bold, compared with all the rest here, in general, maybe bold element seems to be just too much. So again, what the bold will actually suggest. When we look at these here, look at these here, look at this here, what we're going to see. They are pretty much just you know, in the same kind of distance than you. You really look at that, it's like, they basically is too close to each other. So in this way, again, you know, if you want to create some kind of, you know, again, dimensional relationship, we want to create depth. You know, maybe that boldest may not help that much. So first, this one, basically keep it safe, but somehow change this. Maybe not someone change this, maybe just change this. Let's say I just change those like date or year to something regular, maybe something even light. If we do that, you start to see this no longer like that flat anymore. So you start to see something become more dimensional, more depth that you can actually see. So in that case, this is something maybe contribute a little more, like, you know, dimensional feel about the whole thing, of the perspective that you should see from here. And that also maybe can apply on this line here, this text line here. This text line will give you the weight also heavy. You have something super heavy next to it, and also you have something quite heavy on the side of it. So, you know, they are very close in terms of the depth they have, basically. So maybe it's a bad idea to actually try to do something that's the light on here with that, and maybe, you know, and see how the thing will look like. So I guess that's what we talked about, right? Did you play around the 24 even bigger? Just make it bigger, like that, 24, even though it actually touched the border. This formula is like that?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, maybe that one is like too big, but somehow. This, this is relatively too small, because this is same size as this one. So, you know, if it's the next of each other. They cannot. So they won't line up on here, right? So if that's the case, I don't know. The two could be bigger. So you can try. I guess the previous one maybe just too big. But this one looks like it's too small. And also it has something like this. Okay, we look at 24. The weight of it is the reverse one, but it also heavy. Here, next of this and next of it is heavy. So think about that in terms of the weight. They'll be a little bit similar. So it can be a little bit different, you know, maybe like heavier, and then maybe either one, you know, try to do maybe like size contrast, weight contrast, you know, on them and see whether, you know, maybe it could be interesting. No, I think the general problems here, overall problems here is like a lot of things that look like similar in what? Similar in the weight of that. No, so this is I think that's the problem on that. The size and the weight may be like a little bit too similar. Okay, move on. Photograph. Okay, you want to go first? Looks like, you know, some kind of like secret base, like, you know, related to aliens, like, you know, secret base. I don't know, Men in Black, those kind of feeling when you look at these pictures here. Like someone working in the secret agents. Like secret agents. I don't know, just got a feeling. So, you know, things that's like could be very I mean, it gives you overtone that really like a mystery, those kind of things, okay? Very, could be very interesting, okay? Like you spy someone somewhere, like that, maybe say, okay, so give you this tone. Okay, so if that comes with this tone, the text, talk about the typeface you choose, maybe even more, like, those like espionage or spy, whatever those things. That have this overtone, something like that, but this like not quite sure this, typeface can give you, because, this typeface, what kind of typeface should be work better than this one? I would say, something like, we call let me show you that kind of typeface, maybe work better because it relate to whatever that, photograph. Let me try find this. That I couldn't. One typeface is called edit. You can check it from a computer, I guess. Find online I write down. ATTIC, I guess. You can try to look for this typeface. Is like, or maybe other like related to maybe say Harry Potter. I don't know whether you watch it, or maybe that edit probably work better the reason why, because it gives you something like that related to like topics all the time, it looks like to some typewriter type, Courier is one of the typewriter types we call Courier. And also something related to it is related to some kind classify type file, whatever, is actually called a header. Did you see anything? You check it from what's it. Look for typeface added, typeface ATTIC. You probably see something. So that may even better than whatever this you have. I know from our era, we watch, the TV series called X-Files. We talk about ET, extraterrestrials. Talk about alien. We talk about what is a secret hiding from the government, whatever, things like that. They always use those kind of typefaces, like, it's like typewriter typeface, because in the old era, they have this like document that basically just using typewriter typeface. They don't have computer, so they mimic whatever those typefaces and put it on that. So one kind of typeface looks like that kind of feel is actually for edits. You can try to see how it looks like. Things like that. Okay, so I just have the feeling when I see this picture, when you pick this typeface, and I just have that like feeling about maybe it's better off that you can have something similar to whatever the overtone or maybe the field overtone of this picture that can actually use it on the typeface. So this is one of the. And so that may relate to those like other typefaces you have when you use it for that. So remember that, every single typeface comes with, different kind of look and feel. When people look at that, they can feel about it. So that's the reason why these type form taller and type designer, they create something that related to whatever that look and feel of particular topic. Let's say you want Harry Potter, Harry Potter. You think about what Harry Potter typeface would look like. It gives you some kind of like, those like, Bible story, this like, fiction kind, related, that everything related to maybe miracle or magician, those kind of feeling when we look at that typeface. So they kind of pretty much, feel based on how can I say, the witchcraft, those kind of ideas about related to the typeface. So again, you know, every single typeface is kind of carried with some kind of personality. We talked about it in the first project we have. You remember that? No, I asked you, remember the first project we had? I asked you to do this like type identity. You know, you pick the typeface that can be a good representative for you to represent your personality. You know, you feel like, oh, that can represent me because this typeface looks like me. And also, you have say, you know, you write a passage about, you know, explaining why you pick that typeface. You remember that? You know about that before, right? Typeface, you know, supposed to look like whatever, because that relates to whatever matters in market. You know, people say on this way, you know, I saw you also wrote whatever that passage to describe why you pick that typeface. So that was up there. So again, when we see something, you know, because the image will cause so much attention. Again, we talk about this all the time. Say, with your picture, you don't need to put it right in the middle. But people will stare on it no matter what, because the picture. So we started with the picture. When we look at the picture, what? We feel something based on this picture. Then we started to look at other things. So if you pick the typeface and not quite work well with the overall tone or emotion or the feeling of the picture, what can happen? Well, it just feels like, well, this is not the typeface. This is not telling the whole thing. So, you know, we will start to have something. So it's always good that you have a typeface that you pick or the font you pick that actually to tie in with the theme you have. So that is what we kind of work with, you know, like the one you have this like remain kind of the cigarette smoking. So you will try to find a typeface to fit with those kind of emotional feelings when they actually see a picture like that. Because you want everything intact, you want everything kind of relate to each other. Because everything within this picture plane is a part of it. So they have this common task to fulfill as well. Make sure you create the whole look and feel related to something you want to say. Whether there's a message come up with a poster, whether you have something that you want to advocate, whatever. Things need to be fit in with whatever. So the typeface is one of the major visual elements you have, you know, make sure the typeface may work with that and also need to work with that. So that's the reason why I kind of feel like, well, this is mine, give you this kind of, you know, when people walk like that and the backlit, basically from, I mean, the lighting is actual backlit from here, then you see that give you something about, you know, that mystery, you know, it's always like something really kind of dramatic. And it has a lot of things to tell you. Maybe it even related to some kind of like secret agency, those kind of feelings. So that's the reason why if those texts may be in place. I mean, sorry, if those typefaces may be in place. Let me talk about, say, queer, like addict, or similar kind of effect like that. If you use some kind of like the old document kind of feeling about that may fit with whatever the theme you actually create with this picture. So that's the reason why I say, you know, maybe find some typeface that actually works so well with it. Now they are not quite everything. If you really kind of enlarge some typefaces here, I want to. So those they are all Helveticas, right? And this one is not. It's related to that. Helvetica somehow is like, yeah, it's an international. Somehow Helvetica doesn't really carry any personality. I'm somehow to say, because it's more like, you know, so like what was that? Like neutral. Neutral means like not really helping you, but not hurting you. Sort of like neutral. I say I'm neutral, you know, I'm neutral country. You guys fight, you know, for World War II, whatever. You know, nice. So Switzerland is neutral, whatever. So they're not going to they don't deal with other countries, whatever conflict. So they're neutral. So that means that I'm not helping them, not hurting. So in this way, that doesn't really say that much. If you say those are body tags, no problem. You know, I just want to make it light. You know, okay, fine. with something as the major thing, which is actually this one and this one. The typefaces you use may not be quite okay because that actually gives you something, say, I don't know. Maybe it's a little hard to read, or maybe it's related to even say other like futuristic, whatever. No, so it gives you some kind of feeling. I can't say it's again with this, maybe it's also maybe okay, retro futuristic. I don't know how it is old and also new, whether the retro or the back new. So somehow you have that term. So that is like maybe not quite sure what is that. I guess it's like when we pick the typeface, and maybe that's is more choices that you should try. That's the only thing, but when you have something like that big, definitely give you maybe another feeling about this. I can't say it's not futuristic, but somehow it may not relate to that image that well. I just got this feeling. And the other thing is like, I don't know. If I could do something, I would just get rid of this like light on top. See? What do you think about this? Like, if you get rid of it, probably feel much more better. If you do it in Photoshop, it's easier. And then you show how the picture will be even more better if you can get rid of light. Is that light look at it? But this is a gorgeous picture, actually. When you buy something like that, it really suggests something. But except, when we try to look at his hat, and of course, figure here, when you look at what he carry his like, face. But suddenly we see the light beside it. It's like, that is so strange. So if we'd be able to get rid of it, probably better. Some hacks may work far work, but yeah, yes, it's like that. But in overall, give you some kind of dimensional look for this whole thing because you divide the space with loose ends here, make it randomly and with a huge white space around that. It gives you some kind of like, depth that actually provide with those spaces you create. So this is nice on that way. The other thing maybe say, the picture could be even further downsized a little bit. I don't know, because the spaces you divided right now is like, if we look at the volume we have this one, look at this black here. Okay, if we put it in a number, say this is like 5. And then you're going to look at all this white area there. If we kind of add them together with formula, that's also very close to 5. So we got this 5 against with 5 kind of things. So what is that? Again, we talk about, and maybe we can actually create something uneven. So that means like not even. So if you have something even, like 5 to 5, of course, that's even, maybe 2 close. So in this way, it's more like yin yang, even though this is the case, sometimes it may not be a very good idea that when we have something put together, try something like make this a little bit smaller. Say like that, like 1 round smaller, whatever. Then you do the side-by-side comparison. Say this one, I put it here. I make another version. I put it next of it, and we show the size of this picture on this one, and then do the comparison between this and that, and see, which one you feel live better. Myself, I would, I even I come with something like that. I'm not sure whether for myself, I think that's right. I'm not so sure for you, but somehow I guess you have to try by yourself. Let your eyes to tell you whether this is a better way to deal with things or it's not a better way. I think I rather you try something like that. But for myself, the reason why I told you about it because I tried before. It's like it looks like that way if that image and the space, they're not in that 50-50 relationship. It may be better. So again, talk about this is the theory about that uneven arrangement. So things need to be not even, then we'll look a little bit better. This is what I'm gonna say. Even though you may say, hey, this is like, one is a positive space, one is a negative space. There's no way to be even, but somehow think about, the idea about that actually occupy 50% of the whole thing. The others actual, again, occupy another 50% of the whole thing. So in that sense, that there's still in that quite even relationship. So that's why I'm saying that. But I try myself, like, it looks like it's better on that way, because they no longer in that sense of even anymore. So it's worth to give it a try and see how it looks like. This is my suggestion. Projection here is always not a good choice. If you want to create a sense of depth here, maybe it's even better that, we know, are they supposed to be light typeface here on this one? Light or regular? It's already light, right? Why light is just regular, just regular one. Light is thinner than the regular. Okay, we want to check it because I don't know, because based on the projection here, it looks like regular. But the thing we see on my screen, it may be light, but I'm not so sure. I think they are probably irregular. So maybe it's good to try, say, if you try light on this. So this is bold, or not even bold, it's black, is that right? Bold black, bold. So the bold, this is light. Maybe you can even try light and regular, like, swap sometimes. Say maybe this is regular, this is light. Maybe you can even try something like, oh, this is thin. Thin, even like thinner than the light one. So maybe say I keep this the same, but somehow I think this one is the light one, and that with that first of all will happen. So things is like that. Yes, yeah, sometimes I play around with this like thickness of it. Something that we say bold. I mean, we always have this in the mind. Yeah, always have a two stop difference. Don't say it. If you have black, then I have that regular, and then compare together. Maybe I can even have a black and then have a light. So side by side, you see the contrast, and if you something consider a little bit like, exaggerate or somehow something like maybe dramatic, okay, just feel that contrast and really exciting, because it's like, you're not talking about extra, bold, extra, like to have relationship. So the black one with the light. So you think sometimes commercial work can allow you to do that because you think that's a little too extreme. Maybe go to the two soft finishes, like one is the black down and record. If we have something in bold, okay, and that means like another two studies actually talk about something in light. So bold, we skip the record one and then the light, if we do the bold one and the light side by side. So that is also typically something that we draw out, and we have also the excitement about the contrast. So if you have that, you may see something even more delightful here. So I think it was a try because it's not too much things here actually. So that's what could be interesting thing. So when we deal with type, not talking about the size only, we also talk about weight all the time. So if everything created with a similar style, that means the weight of them also similar. So bold, somehow just like bold and regular, quite similar. So again, they may have to live it like relationship function. So try this like two steps, type differences, and maybe you give you something kind of interesting. What's going on here? So it's strange. Because it's like something start to falling down, don't know why. And the other thing, got to mention to everyone, this needs to be too thick right now. So you put 1 pawn too thick, okay? 0.5 pawn too thick. So try to still 0.25. That's probably what we talk about. Because again, those lines are not supposed to be there. We'll somehow use that as a reference. So that's the reason why we call framework references. Okay, any questions? Now Holland. Okay. So did you try, did you spend so much time on it? Yep. Okay. So the major thing is actually not talking about those taxes. I guess, when you do all this tax, about, well, they're more like decorated. They're not the main, the reason why, because these take over the so-called major thing. They take over as the primary formation you have. And those are supportive right now. So they need not to be so, how do you call it? Dramatic differences, whatever, or maybe they no need to be too, what? They, I don't know, it's sometimes it's hard to find something to describe it. You probably don't need to spend too much time to figure out maybe all this relationship and how they make it so dynamic or whatever, because they are somehow working at some kind of supporting role to the whole thing, not the real, the say polygon is that they take over whatever the main character kind of role in the whole thing. So this is somehow the main character. So it needs to be attractive because people will look at it first, and also this is the major thing that attractive people look at. Okay, so it needs to be attractive. So how to make it attractive? One of the things is you create an image with nice proportion, nice contrast, like shape overall, and also that image needs to be in a major position, and also needs to be, something that draws people attention in a nice way. So this is what this image needs to be. So this is rolling. So we can call it, actually it's like protagonist, it's not a main character, that's probably could be accurately describe what is role. So one of the things is the shape of it. The shape of it is when you have the shape like that, what is the shape really kind of interesting? Let's say if it has something to do with, say the tribe or whatever, maybe something that really, if let's say the shape of it is an airplane, how it looks like, is this airplane, whatever, it will be even more exciting. The reason why it feels like that before when you look at this one, is not intended to make it to be something special. So in general, I want the shape looks good, whatever. But when you look at this shape, not about her, not about them, sorry, but talk about the outer, whatever that shape that you have, you create, the plane you have. Is that plane's a little bit not that exciting? I would say maybe a little bit dull. If you look at that. If you don't want that particular shape tend to be something kind like interesting, or you may not want people to pay too much attention to the shape instead, pay attention on that image, don't you? So we just make the shape turns out to be maybe generic, like circle, square, whatever those not important, not say not important, not typical look, not typical shapes. That's probably work okay, in that way, right? So that's the thing. So that's what I say is if you make it like this right now, it's like half the way it means something. I don't know, you probably say, I'm not intentional to do that, but somehow it happened to be something like that. But the point is, you've got to pay attention to the shape. And not the shape with the image inside. The surrounding space outside of these two girls looks pretty much in the same width. So it just tells you they are right in the middle. So we may react with the shape when you see that, because it's not the shape to show the existence of this image only looks like, because the shape is like a little bit quite special. So that turns out to be something I just mentioned, say, hey, if it is a plain shape, it may be even better, because in a plain type actually tell you something even more. They try to intend to tell you maybe a deeper story. Not only talk about whatever we see outside. So that's the reason why. The shape, if it doesn't carry any meaning right now, it looks a little bit that when we talk about the shape itself. So maybe just keep it some kind of like simple form instead of something like that. Or maybe you do another way, say, make the shape more like some kind of special meaning. So that's one thing. And also, if we do that, how about the girl is a little bit bigger? Kind like don't do this like all around similar kind border kind arrangement. Because if we have the all around border similar, what it means what? Similarity, it also talk about even. It's a little bit too even, right? So symmetrical, so the tables. So maybe, maybe you can do that. And also because those like your pictures here, you look at some edge here is quite weird. So why show those strict, why you sharp? So that maybe you say at the shoulder, yeah, because the image like actually is her shoulder. I mean, this is actually her shoulder part. But somehow she's wear like a shirt, whatever, a jacket, whatever, or maybe a skirt, whatever that's which is actually black, something like that. I don't know, but it's hard to tell because by looking at it, I have no clue what it's about. So that turns out to be, well, her arms got cut off, or maybe something missing. So things are so weird on that way. So this is one. Okay. So that 2001, yes, you show that, but again, the 2001. Think about the volume, the size, the weight for this. Compare with this. Compare with this. What do you think? Is that also similar? Or is that also, I can use the term say even, but is that close to even? So again, if you have something like that, you may say it should combine, even though they combine, I'm against with this. If we talk about weight between these and this group, it may also have something quite similar. It's not talking about, it's not only talk about the size of it. It also talk about the importance or maybe the power for attract. I mean, power for power to cause attention. The power of causing attention. So this may cause similar attention as this one. So if we can make sure they are different, they will, one may cause more attention than the other one, something like that. Maybe you got to say about that. If that's the case, we talk about the one is actually heavier than the other one. So we try to do that way also, uneven kind of concept, I mean, asymmetrical concepts like that. Okay. Okay, so that's pretty much what I, but in general, it's so interesting. Some just somehow overused, I would say. Let's see how many circles will be actually. So that turns out to be some kind of major element again. So maybe that's like again, think about they're also just decorative. They're not major things. So when you see this so many happening here, maybe it turns out to be, hey, it will cause more attention because of this like repetition of those old, or sorry, old, those circles. the sort of would cause like so much like repetitions, refactoring. Okay, so, no, okay, it's fine. No question, the next one. Is that yours? Try to yourself? Is it yours? Okay. The first impression we see is like, hey, when we say it's black and white or gray, what do you feel about it? Black, gray, white? If we really have to put say a term to describe the whole thing, is it rather gray instead of black and white? I mean, my question is like, is it too much gray? So the point is it too much gray? So that's a question, I guess. Because again, those grays kind of put it like that. It's like, if okay, let's say we try to get rid of all this gray, what are you going to see? Well, we started to pay more attention, say, oh, but this one first. It's supposed to cause attention, and then look at the guy, and then combine them together and see whether they have this joint forces to make us feel like they are a complete, like, altogether combination. I would let us enjoy reading the whole thing as the primary information set. And go look at that, and then look at the rest of the way. So the grade somehow turns out to be something high, not really helping for the reading. I can't say it's an obstacle, but somehow it's not helping. It's somehow also hurting us to actually read the whole thing. So the grade doesn't really help it at all right now. And also it took over, looks like this took over whatever the major thing. So that's just I think it's the advantage of those grades you actually put it in. So minimize the usage of those green triangles there because we got this way too much. So how about let's make it say instead of doing that, we say I carry this or carry this, I leave this, but I just turn it to be one grade only. Maybe I turn it to be other objects. Let's say I actually find a platform. A platform, like you go to take whatever the subway or you have a platform, or maybe take the train. Okay, high-speed train, you have a platform. Let's say if this is a platform, sort of like image, put it to replace with this like gray triangle here. What are you gonna get? You may have something even more exciting, maybe. And that actually helps to make the whole thing more maybe interesting. Let's say I just not going to do that. I just keep this gray triangle here. Fine, we can do that. I just get rid of some gray. I mean, this big one is small, but that may help. Or maybe say reduce the size of the triangle in somewhere. Just to make it's more like some kind of ornamental things, decorated things. We can do that. So how to do that? Okay, and also, I guess it has some relationship with the hand here, but that seems to be a little like lost. It's like, hey, I couldn't see anything, my hand is like reaching up, but somehow I couldn't reach anything. Looks like that. No, I don't know whether this guy is blind or but when his hand is like not, his hand is actually touching whatever the part of the key is, or maybe there's something else here, then he trying to capture. So you create a very exciting story. If you have that. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, so that's one of the it's too bad that it is something I'm missing. His shoe. Yeah, so it's like it's forced to cut out. Well, I guess sometimes if you can't get something perfect, but somehow if you can try to say create another whatever that's related. Maybe it has a little bit like build up some kind of relationship with another part of this, like taxis, and I put the T closer to it, whatever, maybe I move this O, maybe say, move the whole thing toward the side. The O is the actual part of the shoe that may help to kind of solve the problem. Looks like he's stepping on the circle, or maybe say, stepping on the O on the other side, and you can't tell, so at least for something that we use. We can actually hide whatever that's like problem here. So those things may work also. Okay, so I guess that's what I feel say. I mean, the first thing definitely is looks like the grade doesn't really help that much. That's just something I say. We didn't allow people to use gray at all, just black and white and no, just black, sorry. Just black. So, but somehow if you have image, so you can stay away that you have gray, because we didn't ask you to just do the high contrast. We asked people to not only high contrast, but also make the gray tone. So then I guess, aside from that, people start to put this like gray there. But if you have too much gray, the whole concept about this composition will change. I mean, that's also one of the reasons why we don't deal with chromatic, which are chromatic color. Because, once you've got to deal with color, there's another issue. Value is a part of the color. Value is also one kind of color. When we deal with that, maybe we lose other focus on, say, the relationship among the elements, except color sign. But we work on color later on for this project, but somehow this is what we're trying to say. Too much gray, we're not really helpful for that. Any questions? Middle grade? What about it? Yeah. Yeah, we will reduce the size of it, and we even get away that. So take it out. We don't need so many great triangles. You may want to keep one and put the two out and see. And you may want to like this. So, or maybe the other way is you reduce the size of those triangles, make it smaller. Let's see how it looks like. So those are suggestions, because that way seems to be just over everything. It looks like, when we see something in black, if we try to put it in a photograph concept, something in black means so sharp because you see so clear. We see the edge so clear, we see the object so clear. So that's the black functionality. When we see white, it's also clear because there's nothing there. So the empty space, there is nothing, of course, we see so clear. However, the gray one looks like, if we talk about whether we can actually focus or not, it's hard because it's almost like focus kind of feel because it's gray. Think about that in the reality environment. So, if we surrounded with all this mist for whatever outside on campus, we look at it, we can't even focus because everything is blurred. You know what I'm saying? Not clear. So that way, it's just like, those like mist we see, or the fog we see on whatever sky or outside, whatever, an atmosphere, whatever. So that suggests was like couldn't focus, blurred, and clear, or whatever those concepts. So this gray doesn't really help in that way. You actually got too much on here. They're actually not helping. So they say, too much gray. If we just put the whole thing in the one background gray, we may not say that much gray because they are not in the triangular shapes. Then we just feel, oh, they're not individual objects. But somehow we see a lot of this like individual objects. They are actually just like kind of blurred, not easy to focus. Those kind. you see this object actually existing here. So that's the reason why, because that way doesn't really help. So just play around with less grade and see how it looks like. I mean, it doesn't really work in that way. Okay, so metamorphosis of elegance. Whose work is this? Is your work? So she's just like she today she is so busy with her phone. Okay, so what do you think about this? It's interesting. Okay, everything clear. Do you guys feel it's a little bit too busy? I don't know. What do you think about it? How many typefaces do you use? More than 3, right? No, I don't want to put it like a stop there. You shouldn't allow to use more than 3 typefaces, but somehow once you deal with so many typefaces, you've got to think about whether this is appropriate or whether this is good or not. So I don't know. I mean that different typefaces you apply on here, it helps to create the contrast because shape is one of the things we talk about for those dimensions that we have to consider whether it's good or bad, once we deal with contrast and harmony. So those seem to be just a little bit, maybe, I guess, a little bit easy based on that. The other thing is like, they're pretty cool, in everything. Some may need to be toward a little bit is actually just talk about the spaces or distance between elements. Let's say what is about. So sometimes, when we put something next of something, or maybe say overlapping, for instance, this here. Say overlapping is good to suggest the depth that we see, right? It's a good thing. But how about this much only? Or maybe we should try give it a little bit more stepping on each other. So once this is actually like on right here, maybe you kind of put it in a little bit more. Okay. And similar issue like this one. If we can be toward the edge a little bit more. And how about this here? Would that be a problem? If you have one text line only, let's say I don't have this like captures, okay? If I don't have this one, you just have one line here. What do you think? If I have one line here, should I put it here? Or should I actually move it a little bit closer to the edge here? So a little bit or maybe 2 notches different. Maybe, I don't know. Or two cursors different. The arrow we see on the key packs here we have. When we kind of hit 2 arrow down, that probably is actually it may be good to guide, have it in the location that or in the position that work well with the image. So with that, it's definitely too much closer to inside. Maybe you move the whole thing down a little bit. And also this and this could be close a little bit. Once you have 2 lines, separate that. It's too separate, maybe. And then when we try to read it's like, do you suggest me actually read separately? Or do you suggest me actually read it in more like a 1 sentence sense? That means I will finish this and go this. Is that supposed to be 1 line? I also have this question. I don't know. This is my question. So when we see something, it's a little bit weird that if we only have 1 line, you probably have less problem. If we have 2 lines, it can't help you something like that. Maybe we can shoot this. So that's the thing. And these and that they are in the same like typeface is not problem. With something a little bit changed, it's okay. The only question is like if this relates to elegance, would that consider elegant or not? That's the question. If you want to find something bold enough, will be so many choices. But somehow, again, we talk about the typeface is going to pay. should relate to one of the theme you're talking about, right? So you want people to kind of feel the whole thing in one piece, everything intact, everything related, things just like that. But the personality of this typeface, whether it actually fit with it, then we'll take a look, we'll take a closer look at it. I can say it's not fit, but somehow I probably would say there may be other typeface will be better than this one. Maybe you say, hey, they're basically the same, because this one just like is extremely different in terms of thick and thin. Okay, so this is more like what's the typeface name? Billboard or what? Okay, sort of like this is like for the big side. If you say this is for whatever this like Western cowboy kind of concept, maybe that work because for those signage, they may use these as the type they use. So they're like big bill, like big billboard, whatever, big sign, they may use something like that. They could use a typeface. This is typeface kind of related to that. So it may have a little bit of trouble when we try to deal with this and this. I mean, I can't say I'm not have against a lot like against with whatever you have, but somehow since you pick the topic, it's called elegance. So maybe it's a good idea that you use every single type that fit with that. So this is probably something I want to say. Okay, so what do you think about her shirt? Too much, black like in one piece, right? Too flat. So that's the reason why you put the texture. It helps. If we can even have a little bit more, that help. I mean, bigger, whatever, maybe more elements, more text, whatever, can activate this like dumb area, little bit. It helps. So I guess that's the only drawback. The other thing we also mentioned that already. So that's pretty much like that. This got interesting. See about if I don't have that much, even but once you have this nature here, you make this part a little bit heavier. So this is supposed to be light, and then the functionality for this supposed to be light is what? You make this heavier, you make those like more like, say, we probably want to look at this like more, or maybe say we want to look more and also look at this first and look at this like, more, I mean, pay more attention to this area here, instead of here. But now, once with this, it turns a little bit heavier, and it will draw some attention from here to here. Of course, that is a hierarchy issue that we talk about, We want this to make sure, we finish it. This is more like, much more lighter or decorative, those kind of functionality. So now we just over that a little bit too much. So there could be even, I don't know whether we would replace it with something even smaller. Let's say I only have one letter here. I know it doesn't make sense. Maybe that turns out to be other thing. Could be other, say, some ornamental thing, some decorative things, or maybe other thing. I don't know. But one thing, quite sure, if you reduce whatever it is, or make it smaller, whatever, that will help to make the whole area lighter. And now they still got a little problem on that one. So when you look at it, you're always like, oh, I may want to peek on that nature word. Because I don't know, it's really maybe it's interesting, maybe it actually will cause some sort of tension. So when we try to look at the whole thing, that we may pay quite a bit of attention to the nature there. So that's the thing. Any questions? All right. So that's just like spaces problem, like adjust a little bit out and in and out. Yeah. Okay, think different. Oh, okay, think different. So I thought you actually think different, then you use something different. But the thing you're using is honorary, it's not that quite different. The text itself is like, some broadcast seems to be just too big, right? I mean, I don't know when you see, from this like distance, it's probably a little different than you see it from your screen, I mean, from your computer, from your computer screen. When you see here, probably clear. Put it that way. If we will be able to make this smaller, maybe we'll make this lighter. Then you have something definitely different. And now, when we look at these, it's quite dark. Let's put it that way. Bold or something like that. We're going to say bold or the light. When we don't talk about this is quite dark, okay? This is dark, definitely. And these, even the picture is dark. And those like, black plates, they actually dark. Of course, they're black, so they're definitely dark. And this is dark. I don't know about this one. When we see on the computer, maybe it's better. But that one, or even this one, it is a little bit lighter on the computer screen, but somehow on here is dark. But somehow, if that's the case, that means they are not that light. This one is. So think about the whole thing. If that's the case, that everything is dark and rather dark, then what's going to happen? Everything seems to be so close in their distance because they are dark. So if we put it in this so-called, it looks like three-dimensional, well, so everything is pretty much here. Not like some design is like MS here, 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 and here, maybe. But for your case, pretty much similar thing. So it comes without any depth. The depth we see, the depth is just somehow not quite into it, not here. So what I suggest is really try something different. Say maybe you keep those, but somehow that is not that heavy, not that dark, something like that. The image you may want to do a little bit work on it. Maybe say turn the whole thing a little bit lighter, not that dark, you see that. And that background, maybe say replace with something lighter, against with something darker. So the whole thing is talk about you don't have enough contrast on those like value of elements. So because they all dark. So if you have something dark, something light, something in between maybe. So that may help to make these things completely different. So that's the thing. I guess this is one thing you may want to try to see. And it doesn't matter, you have something in black, maybe this is bold somehow, but something in thin or light. If you do that, you see the contrast maybe give you the suggestion about the depth that actually will be there. If not, we don't see the depth there. It looks like so plain, so flat. That's one thought. And also the thing that you have maybe here, I didn't try other typefaces, and this typeface suggests was one fairly generic, or maybe really general, or maybe very kind of orderly. They kind of suggest something called neutral. It doesn't stand for anything. It doesn't carry any personality. All the work is just somehow helping you. No, I mean I'm just doing this like supportive work. I don't do whatever the major leading for the whole thing. I just don't want to cause attention. But they are big. So we got to think about that. Something called neutral. It doesn't have to, I mean, I can't say carry with no personality, but somehow the personality is somehow this kind of generic. It's not really special, so they are big. So whether we should pay attention to them or pay attention to something else, it's really hard to say. So that's the reason I feel like maybe you should try something really different. Different variable, even different font. And see how it looks like. And even that picture, this is different. It may not be a bad thing that you have something considered small type, small text. So how big was it? 12 points? You got to check with the file and see how big those like point size of those texts. So I get this one, maybe say 12 points, or maybe even bigger than that. 14 points, 18 points. That's way too big. You think about you have a tiny piece of like design, it's pretty much like this big only, right? So, for the body text, maybe the good for large base, maybe they get a good idea that is like, well, body text we put in a size like that. Typically, we have this like from what? 8 point to 12 point only. 8 points to 12 points. That means like smallest one, probably say 8 points. Sometimes may not be that small. And the 12 points, probably the biggest you can go for the body text, body copy. But 12 point may be not quite close either because maybe it's too big. So, but still, that this is like a suggestion. I don't want to say it's a rule, but it's not a suggestion. Say for a size format like this. I mean, we just say, okay, we just want to keep this so-called body text, the body text, this may be called some heading. This may be called heading, right? So heading, which is the first tier, second tier, they talk about some heading. The third tier talk about that body copy. So for the body copy, on this side, as a suggestion, should be between 8 points to 12 points. So if we are 18 points is a poster size body copy. So if for poster, maybe you need 18 points to have all your content or the information you want to pass to people. So 80 points may be appropriate for that size. But for something like this small, no, we can't do that. So 8 to 12. So if you do that, you probably can see your piece will be more interesting. Because you no longer have like very tight space surrounded with whatever your element is tight here, is tight here, and also is tight. I don't know why you're not going to touch with it. So that maybe should sit on top of it. Then we won't pay attention. Yeah, move the whole thing down and make that baseline. Yeah, make the baseline touch with whatever it is. Then in this case, we won't pay any more extra unnecessary attention on this white line here. When we pay, this is quite sharp. When you see the whole piece here, what do you think about the line here? It is quite sharp. You see that. So there's a problem. So that's what I'm going to say. So that is something you want to do. Okay, so I think that's one. And some maybe just for the text are too close to the border, looks like this. Again, it's so tight. What do you mean tight? If I move myself closer to somewhere here, then can I move easily? Looks like I don't want to even move because I move, I hit on the wall. I don't feel comfortable. So that's what we call tight. So if you have a room, how you live it for people just like this, it's too tight. Okay, any question? And then we have each season brings its own beauty and lessons. Is that yours? Okay. All right. So interesting. Little busy on this area, right? Little busy because it's like a lot going on here. If I know, I mean, try to help on that. If we would be able to take one workout. We'll be able to take one workout, maybe it's much more clear. So just a little bit strange on that meaning one here. I mean, in every season, the S seems to be a little bit too close. Uh, quite a bit got cut off that we don't see the S here. So maybe, it's good to pull back a little bit. The meaning one is actually just somehow, because it's like in this slender way to show, I don't know whether it's in italic or not. It looks like it's not, a little bit look like italic, but somehow it's not exactly, but somehow since it's like lying like that, maybe that's a problem. But definitely if this like meaning word kind of disappear, and then it may help. If it disappear, you can elongate this finding a little bit, or maybe say, and move the finding in a little bit, or maybe even make the finding a little bit bigger to fill up this like empty space if we want to do that by the time after you take the meaning out. So ikigai also makes sense if you say finding in every season, even though for that phrase is not a problem. So you don't have to really have like finding meaning in every season. So something like that. So the meaning could be like erase, or maybe could be now take away, or whatever, could be took away. And that's just something maybe in that way, this area may be a little bit clear. And this curve, because it's so identical, this is so prominent. When you see this curve here, we may have a little question about, hey, why everything goes like strict? Why you have a very prominent, like sentence turns out to be like that? Would that consider a little bit kind of strange if that's the case? So that's my question. And also when we have, say, a grid, we remember we follow with a grid, right? So this is actually off grid. This is not like following any grid requirements, because the grid is actually go this way, okay? Right, everything like that. And then everything is straight. But one thing we can show you, so clear about, everything is straight. So this is actually come with a curve, a cursive. So I don't understand, and people probably feel it's like, why cursive? So that's a question. I don't know, maybe you want to make it so special. You want to make it, it's not boring, I want to make sure people can pay attention to it because it's nice, but it also turns out to be something weird. Something actually helping it to not make it so weird is what? The circle you have. But the circle is actually background is not the major thing. Most of the major thing you see in the foreground, you see here is actually strict. So that is why these tend to be a little bit weird. So if it's not like this, however, it goes just like the typical way, maybe you feel it all along there. You may also question about this sort of like those cigarette smoke come out as the text here. So maybe, I guess it's like, depends on how we going to show. One thing for these is with those like repeated kind of curve you have, repeated curve, that you see is like, it goes like this and similar like a pattern that goes like that. Would that be turns out to be, even though it's small, but it's like, would it be a little bit too strong? It's like, because it's special. We see this like it's quite special. So again, if it goes like maybe not all the way go to this special repeated pattern. Let's say if let's say the slope actually start with something strict. And then up to this point, then it start with this part. Strict. So that related to what the slope supposed to really look like. Is that right? And it also helps to solve problems. Say you've got too much repetition for this curves there. If let the curve all the way, it's like what? Boring. You know, too predictable. And got repeating. When you see something like that, it turns to be quite strong. Because you like repeat things like that. So I guess it's also because it's like linked around the edge of the image. It looks like we also create another shape between the image and also those curved lines there. So look at this white area, that also causes attention because it's so special. So if there's no something that overlapping with this text here, somehow that means like you cut this like image back in a little bit. Then you leave this area to purely white, then let the text flow on top of it. Then this area turns out to be maybe more comfortable. So this is the problem, right? This one thing. Yes, that's we'll talk about. The other things. What do you think about the ball, the ball and the picture? I call this a ball. And the picture. Look about the volume. Look about the size of them. Are they too similar? Or maybe even though it's not completely similar, but somehow by proportion, they are so close. So if this smaller, if this bigger, then also will feel better. So again, uneven, asymmetrical, so those are things. Any question? Okay, so we go to Okay, try to remember the old one. The old one is come with the same size, okay? Same size. And also come with some kind of pattern. So I just said, you know, the pattern seems to be too strong. And also it's kind of boring at the same time because the kind of carries the similar shapes and also size the same. And also they go through with the same pattern, so that's the reason why. However, when you make it so much difference, like that, it may be say, you know, why we want to change it? Okay, for instance, why we want to change that background? So the circle, whatever pattern, circular pattern, whatever background. Why we want to change it? Because we don't want the background turns out to be so prominent, and don't want to the background turn out to be just like the foreground. We don't want that. You know, we want to like keep as the status of the background. We don't want people to pay attention to it too much because it's the background. So this is the whole idea. So once you make these like that, that is like, well, you try to take away whatever the guys I wrote right now. Maybe just overwhelming. This is like, it's overdone. So one thing to do, like the one before, we actually do what? Well, we may want to change a little bit. Say 4, maybe say 4 turns out to be a big one. And then let's say I have the 4 small one here, 4 small one here, but somehow turn this 4 small one to be a big one. And then another one, like turn to be a big one, whatever. So in this way, we just make that background sort of like less boring. That's it, but it's not saying it just take over whatever the foreground functionality is. So this is one step. So now it's a background. But I guess if you do that, okay, then you may want to fill out even more. To fill out some white space, or maybe say interesting white space here. Because those white space right now, we try to gain your attention. It will cause attention because they are so unique, so special. So it will cause attention. So that is also not helping, as a role, as a background. So it's almost like work as a foreground element, something like that. So that may be. Right? But on the other hand, we also worry about if we've got too much gray. Again, it falls into the problem like her problem. Too much gray is let you feel like I can't focus on the thing because there's too much gray. So there's also a problem. So we kind of have to kind of minimize the usage of those gray, but also keep that as some kind of like, there's a manageable way as a background. So this is the whole story. So I think the difficulty is right now you have it that way. So how about you think, well, is that when you look at whatever things you find, we try to build up the relationship. Okay, so with that, it's like you scratch your head like, what the heck is going on? Why they kind of related? Okay, that's a one of the relate to whatever the theme you have. The other is like that is too big, right? Yeah, too big. One for himself is big with whatever the great circle behind him and also even make it bigger. So this shouldn't be that big. Again, we talk about something is having what? Close to the border, close to the corner. Okay, surrounded with a lot of white space. That tend to be isolated. If it's like that, it's heavy. So it's big, it's isolated, it's special, it's close to the border. So that's the reason why it's so heavy. So that needs to be maybe, reduced, or maybe you can reduce the weight of it or reduce the size of it. It depends how you do it. So this is like, when we look at his head, you basically just bounce back to look at her, and look at him, and just keep doing that. So, because I don't know, because the, maybe say round, and then round, and then similar size, and then you probably feel that way. Or maybe not similar size, but yeah, still similar size, but similar weight. So probably we do that. So even though you don't have it, even better, but I just say long term, so like you may have to have something here maybe, but not saying like that big, maybe something much more similar, much more smaller. Okay, so what he's thinking, I mean, he got the antenna, say, talking to the alien in another planet, or whatever. So I don't know. We try to understand what is that.
He's somewhere
It actually is an alien,
Oh,
but somehow looks like human because we're being reflected by whatever the frequency we receive, whatever, I don't know, we see him on that way. Yeah, look at it here, his ear, definitely alien. Look at how people got an ear like that. You know? Okay. So other questions? Right? Okay, anybody else didn't send to us? Yeah. Okay, this one, same thing. Looks as you can only dance within a limited parameter because you create whatever circle for her. You only allow to dance inside, whatever. But I just joking, maybe, but when we see dance, like, looks like, oh, she could move around this area, entire area, it looks like. So if that's the concept, it's probably better. Because you couldn't move around. So maybe it's a better of way to actually let you be free in her space around instead of using a circle to circle. Now you can keep her in a place that dance, but you're not allowed to go beyond that, whatever you said, whatever dance would say, how would dance? So she just hit on the wall, and it's dance. So this is the question I have, like, it's a little bit like, I mean, it's a little ironic, but somehow when you say that, it just, that's what I kind of feel about. So, but with that circle, it's not probably if it's in that particular, like, way you want to send out a message, say, should be kind of like, a frame, okay, so maybe that's the idea that you have, that could be a message. So the dancing within a frame or within a parameter, within a border, within some kind of, okay, that could be, the idea. It's not a big problem. Okay, so we look at this, it's like, a thing that could be changed, could be improved is like, one of the things that when we see a heading, it seems like we don't see, in a typical, situation. We probably don't see a heading just by one word only. So there's a dancing, whatever. Maybe say a dancing is something here, then you have sort of like a subheading next of it, telling say explanation about what is it. Okay, so dancing, maybe say dancing, the best exercise ever, whatever, if I have some kind of subheading next of it. And if we do that, what you make this, you enrich the entire meaning or entire message. Two, visually, it helps to make the whole thing more like interesting with more elements supporting some kind, big elements that work well together. Things that no longer that's flat, it comes with dimensional look. So that's what I want to say. So if you have sort of a subheading well there, it helps. Like you will probably put the subheading somewhere here. You put the subheading somewhere here, but that is something else. So if you have something kind more like explanation, in dancing, in peace, whatever, let's say, you put somewhere here, it helps to make this much more interesting and meaningful. You know what I'm saying? Say you got one word only. So if that's the heading, it doesn't really quite mean anything. So dancing, hey, today I told a story to you. Dancing, then you say, dancing what? Then you will ask me, right? So I'm just saying, the dancing here, it is so vague. It doesn't really actually tell us what. Okay? The most convenience. Yeah, you get as something. Because the point is that just say dancing we talk about. Okay, let's say, today our topic is about school. Then you say, what? What else? Like, in the school. So you mean the studying in school? Or maybe say, going to school, whatever, you've got to add something, not to say one word, one term, what's that? You've got to, things transfer to be so vague, it's just like, what are you talking about? So this is like, it looks like meaningless, it doesn't mean anything. somehow, I guess you have to sort of like, so having somewhere here, let's say, maybe add something here, then you substitute that. One thing. The other thing is that if you add another thing here, you actually have to build these kind of more dimensional. Now it's still plain, even though you have one word with the other thing, look about the size you have for all these individual things. We'll see. Except this one. And even though the way for this dancing is quite similar to whatever that's labeled there, the weight. And then the size, the way they are similar. So in terms of making it a little bit too flat, I know you probably don't want to make it flat because you have this overlapping arrangement here. Something like before, I mean, something is in front, something like behind, sort of like create an illusion about the depth there. You know, the illusion of the depth there. So the depth itself can be seen through this kind of thing, but except that, nothing more than that. Because the size, they are similar. So you have something in the similar size, but you see the overlapping, but it's just not quite here to support, I mean, to talk about the depth that actually you want to, we'll talk about. So the depth doesn't really show it quite clearly, unless you also do the size contrast, weight contrast. So those circles could be in different sizes. And also you can also add other elements, like the one I just said, since the dancing now is not really mean too much. So by adding other words or maybe other couple words here, it helps to create more meaningful happening. And also, if you do that, you also create more dimensional look. Since you have one more element here, maybe smaller than the other, then in this way, kind of feel about the depth that actually being created with this kind of setup here. So there's one I want to say. So that is one stone, two birds. Then you actually add one more thing here, which is this text here. So this is about, okay? The other thing is talk about these and these. Every single time when we talk about something, if we cut it into the upper half, second half of the picture plate, whatever on the second half, it needs to be lighter. The reason why, because we use that to create, if we have something considered heavy on the top, something lighter on the bottom, in this way, we can feel about those dynamics, we can feel about motion or movement that can come out from this arrangement because the nature of gravity, we feel about gravity. Things like if I ask you to lift up this chair right in the middle, can you hold it for too long? No, because it's heavy. Why it's heavy? Because gravity. I have to put it down. So you see later on, this will come down. If I say I throw the chair up, just make it by staying in the middle of the air. Even though I do on the picture, what are you gonna feel? You got a feeling saying the chair will come down. So that's what we call dynamic, because what? The force will force it come down. So the same thing, if you have something quite heavy like here, quite light here, the light thing, yes, it could support it for a while, but not for long. So you see that sun come down. So you see the forces, see the movement, see the dynamic. So that's what we talk about. You want to have movement on the piece. So don't make a solid base to support too much on top of it. Make it weak, make it light. Then in this way, you see the forces come down from the top. So that's the reason why we always want something light on the bottom, because we want to create illusion about movement, about dynamic. So that's what we talk about. So this is a little bit too strong. Make it what? Lighter weight, maybe smaller, maybe lighter, whatever. So in this way, we have, and whether you have something that we arrange with those like circles, whatever, make a different sizes, maybe say the positioning of them, the size, whatever weight, whatever that you can adjust with that, to make that turns to be much more movement with it, and also come with some kind of depth that you see, and also this part turns out to be lighter, but less support with whatever. And then you see the pressure come down, it turns out to be more dynamic. Yes, that's what I talk about. And this is quite unusual because the dotted line surrounded with the circle is quite special. We didn't want to keep it like that, or just get rid of it. The reason why, because this also has something to do with this. So with that dotted line, would that really help to build up some kind of relationship, or we actually create less relationship with whatever the circles, because this is quite different. So this is very unique, unique. I don't have to talk to you because we're not the same status, we're not the same kind of things, we're not the same kind of people. So we don't talk to each other. So it's hard to build a relationship. So that turns out to be a barrier for blocking whatever it is to try to work with other elements. So this dotted line, have you ever tried to get rid of dotted lines and see how it works? So we say this is a dotted line. To get rid of it and take it out. Take it out what we want to look like. Maybe it's better than what. So that's I think that's one thing. What else? Anything else? No. Okay. Okay, rock and roll. A smaller one. Did you change the size now? You did, right? Probably change it. I mean, I always got a question like, why is she so what? So how to describe it? So she's too great for that tone, okay? And also it tends to be so flat if that's the case, because every single point, except this, okay, emotion doesn't belong to the okay? And except that, okay? So that is like too plain, too gray, I can say too pale, but somehow too flat. Because the way we make it like that. So this is not a full image. I can't say it's not a good picture, but somehow I think it's not a good picture on here. Maybe you should find a picture that's like better quality on here. This is what I suggest. So that's the thing. Okay. Some is actually quite obscure because you can't even read it because it's too dark. Right? They're too dark. So you can't even read it. So that's the thing. I mean, you put over there on your screen, maybe it's okay. After the projection, you don't keep clear. It means what? It means it's not enough. It just little bit way, maybe say not way, maybe somehow still a little bit too dark. So this is what I'm saying. So that's just the thing you may want to think about. And the other thing is like, with this is like considered too symmetrical. And those are the things, right? Those are too symmetrical. So that's what I was saying. Okay, so maybe just fine. And also the entire design, except this part here is not symmetrical, the way others look like. Okay, so typical way to arrange it, but it's a little bit boring because it's everything is right in the middle. And I don't want to say it's nothing really interesting, but still use this like reverse type interesting, and also that maybe somehow could be a little bit more, I guess, could be a little bit more dynamic. Let's say one thing to do is like, you actually try, say, move this like to some like a side and leave another half that work with other things. So that would be more like possibility, and also maybe you use the same concept like this, like I leave the picture here, but somehow not make it so big, make it a little bit smaller, like that big only, and but make the text bigger, and then you have some text can be huge, can kind of really make people feel about rock and roll. So it's not singing rock and roll. So it's like what? What? Minute. I don't know what kind of music, just like singing, whatever it is like. but maybe some kind of like metal music, maybe, I don't know, maybe easy listening. Maybe another like, blues, maybe another, whatever, jazz, I don't know. When you look at her, it looks like, but definitely she's nothing to do with rock and roll. Because it doesn't really have this rock and roll feel at all, so quiet. So again, I'm not saying you definitely have to match with the tone, with the text, whatever, but somehow, but still, once you make the heading so big, you want people to feel that. So it doesn't really kind of match with it. So I kind of feel it's like, maybe, maybe we'll play it with something else. We call blues, maybe we call other, maybe, maybe even better than for rock and roll. Once you put rock and roll in. So that thing is like, I guess, I don't know whether this is a appropriate picture or whatever other would be. But if we be able to change another picture, we can play around the rock and roll, the whole thing will be more interesting. I guess this is a little bit like towards like that rock and roll feel at least, like because things are no longer that straightforward. Or the setup, it turns out to be a little bit different and didn't like I guess a violent but somehow movement, and you can see it like that. But it could be good that you can actually play around this. Say from the early Russian drum hits to the is actually start from here. And this later actually start right between whatever, or maybe a little bit like in then compared with that. Then you start to see things is no longer from any regular roll or regular track or whatever. Then you see that maybe we work with a little bit like walking. So this is about the wording, about the meaning of wording, and also about the pictures you have. So it looks like they're not quite there. So that's the thing. So when you really kind of walk, and then actually that's the end there. And they don't use ampersand, they use N. So rock and roll is not roll. Okay, so this is like, what is that? The question. They use the N. Is that N but ampersand? Okay. This is like that. So there's one mistake. And the picture is definitely too dark. Okay. All right. Anybody else I didn't talk about? No, that's it. Okay. So let's take a break for that. And I guess it's like more or less it already did with whatever the match paper was, right? So we gotta take a look at the match paper version. After that, then we talk about the final project. Okay. All right. If you're not listening to anything, then you also have your version anyway. What's the one, right? Yeah, it's fine on your file. Yeah. You have so if you change it, you still okay, it's still hanging dates, you still give me dates, okay? But yours, but you that we decide one, not this whole one. If you don't want to, but you still, you don't get what it is. Yeah, and this one. You also change this one, and then you also have the short version anyway.
我要跳回嘛，是这样子。
They give you an element, or how many times? You can upload it.
No.
Yeah, if you want to do it.
我要改的，是这样的意思。
No.
哦，这个
Yeah, put it in a front.
定下来。
Yeah.
再贴回去。你们把这撕下来。别撕，别撕，别撕。哦。
No, this one, you don't have to change. Let's see. It's one good.
那俩都修改，再改进是吧？
Yeah.
哦。
No, no, last time I showed you how to cut this.
这个。会吧？
Change whatever design, upload new design. And the hanging version, you don't have to do anything. Okay? So we write.
那今天的句子不是贴出来吗？
Right on.
其实
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, you do it, you not to do it, I don't know about that until I open it up, so the deadline was elected 11/59 tonight. So you can also have a little time to do some change, if you want to. And before you go, and do it, this is what you get. So you make a decision about what you want to do or not, okay?
那我们那什么？啊，我贴什么？贴什么？
Okay, you guys understand what to do, right? Or you have absolutely lovely. So if you don't have a question, we should move on to, what we're supposed to talk about. You know, project number 8, actually, which is the final project. I sent this to your WeChat group chat. And also I have it on our canvas. So we talk about, you know, the final project. Yeah, final project. So today is actually the what? The fourth last week, whatever, you know, 4 weeks, 3 weeks later, actually the semester will be over, right? So we have this. Okay, the last project we're going to, or the final project we're going to, talk about is sort of typographic synthesis posters. So that means using typography to do posters. But typography only, and that actually apply everything there. So I'm going to show you some examples later on, this is like, what we supposed to have that. Say for the objective. So, the assignment seems to synthesize or combine what we have learned from the class this semester using a grid-based. A grid is quite important because there's a lot of things lining up. Not like the thing we just typically doing, do this like three placements arrangement. But this one is like, because it's about a lot of text, it's better off that we have a grid being applied on that. But the grid is no more than you're going to create, say, some kind of guidelines on your, say, Illustrator file or maybe the InDesign file. So it's just up to how you're going to arrange that. But the major function with this grid is what? For alignment. Things line up alignment. Okay. So using a grid based on like a font, you will create the front and back of a posters that demonstrates visual hierarchy, legibility, expression, and clear and effective information design. So the content of the poster is the historical classification of type. You still remember those classifications? Well, we got to remember it because what is for your final exam. Do you still remember we have an exam on the last day? Well, we do have an exam. You carry with 10 points for the total points. Oh, so you should read your handout. And this project is basically helping you to review whatever something you learned. So that's the reason why we have the classifications here. If you still remember the classification, what is that? You just give me a look like I never understand what you're talking about. So it's like, do you remember those classifications? No. What is that? Do you remember that? No. Okay, how about transitional? What is transitional? Good job. How about modern? Well, but only the typeface is a font, but when we talk about classification, we talk about the 5 classifications. So those things you got to know. But by the time when you work on this project, that's something you got to apply. So the historical classification of type. So those things you will force yourself to read it again. Okay. So that's the reason why. And also anatomy of type. Remember this like old style, transitional, those things you okay, go back to read it also. By the time when you work with the, project, you will know about it. Of course, you already knew about it, somehow you just don't remember. But those things is like a reminder for yourself to actually got to read that, okay? And the other thing is like the anatomy of type. So we tried that a little bit before, right? So it's again, this is also related to the text. There's something I got guarantee with it is like that it would definitely in your examination, which is like anatomy of type, okay? So the other thing when you work on this, you will know about it. And the history of your selected font and font designer. Remember the other day show you the look of Baskerville. The look of Garamond, remember that? Where they see those people face. Of course, you know, those illustrations not real, you know, I don't think that's real. But somehow, I guess, at least, you know, people just try to kind of like, maybe say, dig out whatever those information about those people. From maybe some kind of like books, manuscripts before when they have it. So they just have the picture. So those are considered font designer. Okay, those design font. The objectives are too for this one. It's like we try to gain, for instance, with Greek. Since we got to deal with Greek, right? Imply lines and shape to create visual structure. So visual structure is like the layout, whether we have a norm, a fashion we kind of follow with, you know, what that going to relate to the entire design, arrangement of those tags, a combination of the entire thing, those kind of things. B, explore the relationship between the typeface and semantic content. Typeface have their own personality. Typeface has its like characteristics. So those things that may have some kind of semantic content with it. Okay, C, explore typography to communicate clear concept expressively. So explore typography to communicate clear concept expressively. And D, explore typography that creates a visual impact through elaborations and ornamentation. So ornamentation is a part of whatever the typography we talk about. Right? That is also actually gives you a feeling, a concept about something, and also contribute some kind of impact. And E, explore typographic space to amplify and expand context and meaning. And F, explore typographic lines as a vehicle for conveying a concept. So remember a long time ago, we talked about, hey, if we want to express migration, we'll tell you. Like I showed you before, like migration. So what is it supposed to look like? Oh, I use the type gradually bring it into different part of those letters and move it up and down whatever it is, and things to get to express the migrations. So if we think letter or type, there actually is a symbol. Maybe say object. So object can put object in somewhere. Object can also can have some kind of performance based on whatever something you want to act with. So maybe say I want to show you say happiness. I'm going to show you how happy you are. Maybe you can have that sort of simple letter type with dancing with it, you know. So that's the kind of thing that you can actually show it. Put the text itself. Put the type itself. And G, explore paragraph text to create a visual texture and value. The match paper version we work on is actually a study of what? Value study. We have that black, we have the gray. When we use gray to represent something light, when we use something in black to represent something heavy. So the same thing. So text itself is maybe say a block of text, which is actually a paragraph of text, or maybe a column of text. It's actually suggesting to use what? It's a rectangular shape. It's a rectangular plane. Text actually there suggests whether this is heavy or light, or whether it is dark or light. It's actually a value, indication to show you the value of it. So we can actually say this is a plane for the text to something called, well, this is a rectangular shape with text as the texture. It suggests something considered a light value. Maybe we can actually call things on that way. So text is a text. Text also means what? Symbols. It also means textures. It also means what? Better. Because again, all visual elements does that. So text or type is, not different actually. But text or type actually carry one more meaning, which is actually, it carries actual meaning. Maybe you can tell with the letters, with the word that we have, but other elements, that's the same thing, but somehow we need to understand that, right? Maybe we don't understand. Maybe something we're using is a pictogram as a pictogram, image of pictogram. Use that to describe whatever. It also comes with a story, but just not like, the functionality of the text. But they also have a story may tell, or it may even have a message to tell. We're using that to understand, we're calling that is visual language. We don't call it as like a regular, like English, Chinese, whatever those language, which is using visual language. The typical one we see is like, you go to the bathroom, you see that's the men's room, ladies' room, whatever, that we understand that, it's a universal language, actually. This is also the visual language we have. So that's the same thing. It's just somehow a little bit different. Okay, so H developed a discerning eye for visual hierarchy to dramatically convey a concept, and then I is explore the use of the surrounding white space as part of the totality of a typographic expression. So the white area also does it. Remember we just mentioned about, hey, if we got the eyes there, leave some white space and let the people can follow with the eyesight of the particular object, and then to see, what she or he kind of looking at. In this way, we can kind of see through the entire design. This is a white space kind of function to give you some room to let you through whatever to look at other, elements within that piece. Okay, so a grid is a skeletal framework designers use to organize information within a spatial field. When used effectively, typographic grids provide forms and space with proportional harmony and aesthetic beauty. The final result is clear and more accessible communication. Okay, we do have some limitations for this. Okay, when developing your grid, consider the shape of your grid type. If you choose to use a large letter as part of your design, it must have a clear relationship to the font, such as a G for Garamond. So it has some kind of reason why you want to do that. Try to find the rationale behind. You must use all the copies provided for the project, but the copy, I need to talk about that later. And then you must research information about your font and write 2 to 4 paragraphs about the font. So you got to get some copies from somewhere to actually to describe the font you picked. Okay. And then your paragraphs will be included in your poster design, and a copy will be provided. But somehow, again, when we talk about copy provided, when you show example, that's just probably you got to get it from there. Okay. So you must include definition for your terms. And then you may not alter, cut, fill, or stretch the letter forms. The reason why, because, we try to keep that the form. So if you can do that, maybe that's a little bit problem, because it's talk about information, conveying requirements based on that. So, that font somehow also function as a sample for people to actually look at how the fonts look like. So if you change it, and then it may be a little problem. Okay, your designs may blend bleed. Okay, when bleed is like something kind of go like bleeding. So when you look at it, do you understand what's bleed actually? You don't. Okay, I want to show you the example, tell you what's bleed. Okay, you must, and then your design must be black and white. You may include light and simple illustrations, but the type must be dominant. And then keep in mind the following principle of design. Unity, balance, either symmetrical or asymmetrical, emphasize focal points, scale, proportion, rhythm, and the relationship of figure ground. Okay, what we consider. Choose one or more of your grids and stretch the copy for your poster. Choose the most successful. So the grid I gave to you is one of the you can use for this. I mean, for the poster number 7, which is something you already finished, or you can create your own grid. So it's no need to follow whatever those grid. But it's easy to create your own grid with those guidelines on your, say programs. If you go to Illustrator, it can actually create a grid inside. If you go to InDesign, you can use it InDesign to create a grid. So it's just up to you. Maybe you say, I just need the grid to be in columns only, not talk about this like video grid. Grid is more look like a square, rectangle, those kind of thing, right? Okay, so number 2 consideration is this is the last day to turn in. I mean, so the deadline is actually the last day to turn in the final project. So you got to think about you got to have it complete, no more than say later on when you can turn it in again. So that's just the thing. So you got to figure out that. So we may have the fatigue by that moment, but still, but the things is like not too much you can actually do. Okay. Deliverables. Create 2 11 by 17 posters on nail-bound paper. Retain all thumbnails and sketches for references. So this is size we'll have. Okay, so we have to talk about grid. We have to talk about columns. Then we take a look at what we got here. There's some examples here. Okay, for this one is future. So will future belongs to what classification? If we talk about 5 classifications, future belongs to what classification? Well, this will be passed to you later. Then you can actually see it from here. And also since we have to provide the text, actually the text is actually here. So if you do that, you copy those texts, it's come with it, okay? So these are all PDF files you can actually copy those texts. Not a desire. Okay. So here is 5 classifications: old style, transitional, modern, Egyptian. This is called what? Sincero. Okay. So why this being highlighted? Because the chore belongs to Sincero. So the chore belongs to the classification of Sincero. Okay. So what's the date of it? This is the date here. So for regular future, 1972. And then for say extra bold, 1952. You don't have to take picture of this, I will send it to, or whatever, but we can just record whatever we got. So for this one, it actually say about the date as well, and so to the timeline, so clear, and describe what this belongs to, and also what your chore is. So this is the whole explanation or descriptions about the chore, the typeface. And then I give the name called what? Name of the chore here, and also the typeface timeline. So typeface timeline is actually, maybe you can put the heading for this page. So it comes with a sibling, which is like, because of two panel design, maybe two, we talk about two design, 211 by 17. So two panel design. So this is one panel, this is another panel. So same design. So we talk about, we do multi-pages design with actual 2 pages design. So this is another side, maybe say, or maybe another page of this design. It's called anatomy of type, which actually talk about the choice, right? But somehow it's more focused on anatomy of type. We have something similar done, right? Remember that the second project we have something similar like this. We have this as anatomy of type. So this is basically more like detail, so more football, because we've got more space for this. We've got a high page to put this anonymous type. So we have to, again, provide the information about this text, what it means, or maybe, sorry, you have to provide information about this different part of the title. So that's the reason why we call it anonymous, because it's anonymous. So it's up to you. I'm not saying you have to follow these, because if you still remember, those terms should be way more than what we just got here. So you make your own choice. So, and also I want to tell you about the anatomy of type. We definitely go into the examination we have. So those things you got to learn. If we say, I don't know where to learn it, look up your handouts before. They're all there. Okay, so that I keep telling you about, we have the final examination at the end of this semester. So I didn't lie to you, so they're gonna do it anyway. So this is actually helping you to guide, review, recap whatever you have, whatever you learn. Okay, so the anatomy type, the audience, like, you may ask me about whether you got the right draw diagram. I may have a question, like, a counter question for you is like, if you don't draw a diagram, how people know about the anatomy? So that's a question. So it looks like we definitely have no choice. We got to have this diagram. So within the diagram, we see there's a couple things here. Headline, midline, is what? Anybody see this? The X side there, and also the red line there, whatever. So you got to have those kind of things that put over there. So, and also with like pointing system. What pointing system is like? If you want to show people, hey, this here, maybe it's good there to tell, hey, I give it some kind of point there and help you. This one doesn't show that. The other one, maybe a little bit better. Say, to circle that. To give you an idea, hey, what is it about? Or maybe give a point to say the location about what's that. Something people do in this way. This is circle. This is a part of it. This is using indication only, like that. So that's some kind of points, the character where is it, whatever. Those things like that. So there's so many ways to indicate. You find your own indication system. Okay, so that's a better. And then you probably will also want to give like some background history about this anatomy. If like some kind of briefing, or maybe say lay some kind of like framework for whatever that maybe you got some wording with it. But this is not definitely a requirement for this. You may have your own choice about putting whatever there. as long as you have this like analogy of type thing there, okay? So basically, the first page we talk about typeface timeline with the history of the font you pick. And also with the idea about the classifications. Okay, then the second page, or maybe say, second part for this project is the anatomy of type. Most likely talk about the diagrams about showing the anatomy, different part of this font, different part of those type, and also some maybe say history or background, whatever, to talk about, anatomy of type. So at least, you show the diagram, say it's an anomaly type, but, you also want to let people know, hey, what is an anomaly type? What's the definition of it? Oh, this is the thing to show whatever the structure or skeleton of the type. So that's just, more or less you want to give people a briefing about what is it. Okay, so keep on looking at it. This, I want to skip that because it's like, I don't know, this is more like, another type. Ghost version. I don't know why I got that. Okay, cast on. Okay, construct on this way, and in a vertical way, like that. All right. So if you size, well, some arrangement for those like letters here, and that letter can be something like two parts to show whatever you got. Right? So that's just like it. And when we come up with something, again, with so many times we deal with it. If we really deal with many things together, and then you tend to put it in some, maybe say one picture plane, some not picture plane, in a plane, right? You arrange it in this way. Then we started to see they no longer just individual things, but also they are what? They are a plane with texture inside, right? The texture is just made up with what? Strokes, lines, and text, right? So this is also can be a plane. We call it like, point, line, and plane, right? Point, line, and plane. So point got repeated, which is a line, right? Point repeats to make a line, and the line repeated to make a plane. So this is a plane. So plane with texture, just like the text or stroke here, or maybe lines here. So then we can also consider that is on that way. So if we start to think about things on that way, you may have more like, a little bit different horizons on, or maybe different, point of view, perspective on what we deal with, That's another version, but somehow it's in color. We just deal with black and white, okay? Not deal with color. Not too much gray, okay? So again, that's the sort of thing. Okay, the other interesting one. We really want to turn it to the black and white, so you may have a different type, gray scale on it. So this is one of the timeline. And this is an anomaly of type. So the cartoon they are just not matching. But again, for your case, you only deal with black and white, so you're not dealing with that color. So you guys think about this going to be side by side put together, right? One side is that timeline, perfect timeline. The other side is like what? Anomaly of type. Okay, there's another one, universe. Okay. One U is actually go this way. I don't know where to see it because it's a little bit too dark, I guess. Another U, oops, another U go this way. One U like this, another U like this. You know, because you deal with two pages, think about the relationship between two pages. Relationship between two pages. So it's like because they basically being side by side put together. So how they look like? It's a combined design, not talk about individual pages only. So it's like one, like you can still call it one design, of course, you know, but somehow they were put together. So how they look like. Okay. That's another one. Scaramon. So what Garamond belongs to? What classification for Garamond? Uh, what to do? What is the classification of Garamond? Well, we have five, you know, five classifications. Actually, should have more than that, but somehow we just focus on those five. No, funny things about the thing about, you know, besides those five, you at the end for sans serif is one of the classifications. Okay, so we will break down sans serif into another three sub classifications. You know, so when we say you know that sans serif, we have say grotesque, humanist sans serif, and also we have geometric sans serif. So those are also considered like you know the subset for you know that you know classification. So again, this is say you know Garamond. Garamond belongs to what? Old style. Okay, you got to go back to read those like you know handouts about classifications, anatomy, and also other. So this is anatomy or type for this one. Another design, which is what? Can you find it? Can you find it? So what this font's name is? Okay, so by that. C A S L O N. So it's what? Caslon. Okay, so this Caslon. So Caslon belongs to what classification? It tells you here already. So which one actually got highlighted? Transitional. So you know, Caslon belongs to transitional. So this is the timeline, and this one is an anomaly type. So gave you this diagrams and some background and some even a lot of information, a lot of information about this anatomy, different parts, descriptions, and also it does give you literature. Okay, literature. Okay, remember we talked about bleed. Bleed. When we talk about print, so look at this picture plane here. look at those like color, whatever. So it actually touched that, right? When we create something, let's say a document is 8 by 11, something like that. So you create a color plane is actually 8 by 11 only. So what is going to happen? Tell me what's going to happen. When you print it print. How about if when we print, it should be fine, but at the end, once you finish, everything when we create in this in the press, it needs to be trimmed, right? You have to cut it if you want to make a bow. After things print out, you're going to trim it. If not, you won't be able to get a bow because you cut it. Every single page is put together to form the signature. Once you put those signatures together to form a book, something like that, okay? So this is what we do. So if the thing you create is just based on that 8 by 11 only, what's going to happen? Well, printing is not a problem. But somehow, if when you cut it, how are you going to for sure the cut is in the correct position? If thing is not going to be in the correct position, what's going to happen? I cut a little bit out, then what's going to happen? Well, you see a white line there, right? See what I'm saying? So that's the problem. So we have something invented. It's called bleed. So what is bleed function? Bleed means like when we create this color plate, we no longer do just 8 by 11. We do bigger than 8 by 11. Okay? So when it go to the press, the actual print beyond the size you have. So even maybe one day someone can make a mistake when they trim out the thing, when they trim the page out, just a little bit slightly, off position. It still won't affect whatever we see. We won't see the white line there because you got the bleed, reach out more area to protect whether someone will make mistake for this cutting or not. So that's what we bleed, what we call bleed. So the idea about is like it allows bleed means what? When we create document, something can be cut off for the look, but somehow because it's like maybe say that C can actually cut off for more than that, or maybe say some color plates actually making that like cut off fine. So when we create something like that, make sure we create a blade. So this is the idea about it. Okay. So this is so many examples for that. Okay, we move on. Rockwell. So what Rockwell belongs to? Interesting question, right? What Rockwell belongs to? Any idea? So the typeface is called Rockwell. What classification do you belong to? Oh, I don't see. Oh, what's gonna happen for the final exam? Is that Rockwell belongs to sans serif?
There.
Is serif?
Yeah.
Which one? We got 5 classifications. We got old style, transitional, modern, Egyptian, and serif. So what Rockwell belongs to? Which classification it belongs to? Old style,
Yeah.
modern, or what else? Now by guessing. So what is a special character? What is the attribute that what will carry with? What is that? Well, this is a very special serif. If you still remember the term serif, okay? But it's very thick. So we have a term for this, what? Slip. They don't use the term called slip serif. They cannot use the term Egyptian. Egyptian same as the slip serif. So this is slip. So, okay, so like people kind of wearing high heel. You know what I'm saying? So it's a slip. Slip serif is actually what it belongs to. All right, so next page of it is anatomy of type. You come with even some kind of like background, whatever, with those diagrams, individual part of this, and start repeated in another part of whatever. Depends how we're going to divide the spaces to use. And also come with a list about all this like, hey, glossaries about those like terms. What they about, what the meaning of it, whatever. Another one people love to do is called Bauhaus. Bauhaus. So what Bauhaus belong to? So look at the other one, okay? So really lovely, really interesting design, okay? So we'll look at the first page first. So what Bauhaus belongs to? So I guess people was like, because Bauhaus, whatever design, so they love the Bauhaus idea, even for type. So Bauhaus. Bauhaus belongs to what classifications? So it already give you an answer. Well, this is in gray, okay? On this one in black. That means it's got the indications to tell you what this belongs to. Sans serif, right? The Bauhaus belongs to sans serif. And then this is the anatomy of type. See how this looks like. Another one is Gaudi. So what Gaudi belongs to? Oh, so I already told you about it, so easy. And then when you see this, it doesn't come with a diagram or say indications about the timeline is there. You know, she just make what? The date there. So the year actual represent what is it they're using numbers only to tell the timeline. Okay. So you make a decision about whether something without a diagram is powerful enough to describe timeline or not. I think it's up to how you think about it. So it's about how you're going to decide. And you know, what kind of information you want to tell people. What is the best way to tell people with your design? So those are questions that come to mind to decide what you're going to do. Okay. Okay, this is the anatomy of type. So another one, Garamond. So you should know what Garamond belongs to. Another lovely one is universe. So what universe belongs to? And serifs, right? So we like keep using that UN kind of relationship to create, you know, the background. Look at the second page. So it's like more like a track, no train track. So it's kind of interesting. Have the continuity. Okay. Another interesting because Gilsons. So Gilsons belongs to, all these are white. All these are in white, except this one in black. So we see that, easy to pick up which classification it belongs to. Okay, so this is anonymous type. You look back and forth. It looks like. And then the Rockwell again, emphasize of the year 1934. Which is fine. So back and forth also, nice looking for these two panels together. And then Rockwell. So look at the relationship. So how people put them together. You may consider that a two different layouts, but somehow they more look like siblings. Like, brothers, sisters, like brothers look like siblings, like work together to show a bigger picture. So this one is like Rockwell. Another Bauhaus, I think when you look at the previous one, Bauhaus, it also carries some kind of more like Bauhaus style or some kind, more or less looks like a little bit playful style, like the Bauhaus timeline. And the Bauhaus, for the anonymous type, if I put them together like that, it's quite interesting. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to pass this to you on WeChat. So you can take a look. But the purpose for that is what? Since you need those tags, they all PDF, you can highlight and just copy the text and you do that. But somehow with these ones, it also needs some text of your own. So this is one of the, say, a place that you can actually get those tags or those contacts. But you also may want to do your plan to justify those information you put in it. Some of the sources. For instance, if you do something for another type, you may have your own set of terms or part of those like letters or those types you want to put over there. So you go to do some research about how to take those descriptions. Or maybe you want to do so much, compared with whatever it is. So it's a little bit hard to kind of send those copies because everyone is on their own page about what kind of content or what kind of information going to go there. So I'm going to pass this to, I'll load up on WeChat, and then you can actually grab it from there. Okay, so far any questions? So when you look at the deadline, is actually talk about December 18th, they say today is November 27th, so we have a couple rounds to look at that. But don't get me wrong, don't forget, by the last class, we also have an exam. There's like, no, so it's like, that is something that's the way to make people remember something. Okay, so we do have the large days or something that we know about. At least you can tell me that, I don't know what it is, Ascenda right now. What is, do you still remember what Ascenda? What's the Ascenda? What is Kanta? Those things we talk about all the time, it's useful because, we're going to stop on the Ascenda. I'm going to stop on the descender. Or maybe say, hey, find a bigger counter type to replace with something that is illegible. What do you mean for that? Oh, the counter, let's say, for instance, O. In the space of the O is a counter. So a bigger counter, more easy to read. Okay, so this is the idea about it. Like, it's more legible. Bigger counter, more legible. So that's the reason why if you know about those terms, it actually helps us to understand something easily. And also it's more easy to describe it to people. So that's the idea. Okay. Okay, so the rest of today, what we do is we want to fix whatever you have. We do it, and also if you want to finish with cutting, putting things on the match paper. Sorry, cutting match paper to put those on the board. And you can also start with word and part of it. So this, it's like, okay.